Convention 2018 of Orlando, Florida. Our next speaker up is a 25-year terrestrial radio host come this November, 25th anniversary, with frequent Red Pill speakers and speakers from this convention like Rollo Tomassi, Richard Cooper, and Jack Murphy. In addition to that, though, when I first talked to him on the phone a few months ago about speaking at this event, I remember hanging up the phone and immediately thinking the intensity and level of masculinity this guy has is becoming, he called himself a dinosaur about it in this regard afterwards, but it really is becoming rare today. And for a variety of reasons, we don't like that. But it's really powerful and almost beautiful in a sense to see it. This level and intensity of masculinity, I think, used to be a lot more normal in America in the West, and it's badass to see it come back at the event. Every year we have a speaker like this, older gentleman from a different generation who brings that to the table, and it's awesome. Without further ado, please help me welcome Pat Campbell to the stage.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Good morning. How's everybody doing? First of all, I'm honored to be invited here. It was about a year ago, I guess, I officially got red-pilled with Rollo Tomassi. I had always been sort of the same mindset, but I wasn't quite ready to make the leap. In fact, his books have been an epiphany for me. I found out that I'm what they call a trad con. And that is somebody, I'm the goon squad for religion. I'm the enforcer. I'm the guy that shames you when you step out of line, or at least I used to be until about a year ago. In fact, Rollo has a 4th book coming out. He's offered me the opportunity to write the foreword for it, but it's all about religion. This is the linchpin to the rational male, because religion is the enforcement mechanism for the feminine imperative. I'll talk more about that a little bit later in the program. But when people ask me, what do you do? I used to say I'm a conservative radio talk show host. That's sort of generic, and it tends to piss some people off. Other people go, oh, great. So my elevator pitch, and if you go to my Twitter account at twitter.com/PC1170, it says, I talk about things that matter with people that care. The reason I'm here today is you are the people that care. And I've got things to say that I think are relevant to this audience in particular. I'm a father of 5, and I've got 2 boys. And I'm genuinely afraid for them as to what they're entering into in this day and age. In fact, I've used the following to explain Rollo's book, okay? Imagine if your son wanted to play football, but he'd never seen a football game, and he doesn't know the rules. And you put him in a uniform, and you put him out on the field. What happens? He's going to be humiliated. He's going to be slaughtered, right? So the rational male, the entire series, which I highly recommend, is the rule book for playing the game of intergender dynamics. The problem is the women have always had the rule book. We haven't had the rule book, or we've been fed a false rule book. What Rollo would refer to as like sort of a Disney-style princess, one-itis kind of thing. We've been played. It's time to wake up. It's time to take the red pill. And if you've got children like I do, I've got 5, 2 boys, but even for the girls this is relevant. You need to read the book, and you need to pass on the knowledge. Now I'm gonna start here talking about some of the things, just to give you an idea of what I do on my program. Okay, so let's see. About 2 weeks ago, there was a story in the news about this 35-year-old hulking bodybuilder who beat the living crap out of his living girlfriend, who was 21, for about 40 minutes, putting her in a coma, putting her in the hospital, and it was all triggered by him looking at her cell phone, okay? By the way, she went into court and tried to get the charges dropped against him. Fortunately, because there was video evidence that the DA had, what she wanted didn't matter. They're going to prosecute this guy to the fullest extent of the law, all right? Another little interesting side note, too, his attorney tried to blame it, he's a competitive bodybuilder, on roid rage. And I said, that's pretty interesting. Then I took a look at the actual items that were confiscated from the house. He had amphetamines, methamphetamine, he had cocaine, he had ecstasy, and he had steroids. But it's the steroids that did it. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is sort of a selective narrative, but it's important to note because it's more of the demonization of testosterone, and testosterone is masculinity, and masculinity, as you know, is what? Toxic. So that's why they nailed that. They don't tell you those other drugs couldn't possibly have anything to do with his crazy behavior, right? So back to the phone thing, and I'm going to tie this into a story here real quick. Anybody, if you're in a relationship, especially if you're not married yet, we always hear about controlling men, right? We don't hear about controlling women. They're out there, and they are legion. If you've got somebody that's checking your phone, male, female, that's a problem. That's a problem. And if you're not married to that person right now, get out as fast as you can, because that is like one of the biggest warning flares. Rollo and others talk about, the ink. They talk about the piercings. They talk about the hair color. If somebody's checking your phone, that's a bad omen of things to come. You got a control freak on your hands, and it's only going to get worse. It's only going to go downhill, and they have trust issues. Get away. Get away. You deserve better. You deserve better. So we had a story a few weeks ago about Bridezilla. So this is a chick who was going to have a destination wedding. And I'm guessing it's probably her second or third, because usually on first time around, you don't do a destination wedding. So she's going to go to Thailand with her husband-to-be. She invites 150 of her closest friends. The cost, $3,000. Please RSVP as soon as possible. Only 15 people decided they wanted to go. That pissed her off. So she changed the destination. I'll make it closer. So she decided, we'll go to Hawaii. It only costs $2,000. This time, only 7 people replied. Now she's really pissed off. And she's got all sorts of demands. It's almost like a hostage negotiation. And then she talks about the bridal registry. Oh, if you're going to go to the wedding, at the bare minimum, you must have a $75 or more gift. Talks about the bridal registry. She says, don't worry about the cheap stuff. That's all been bought. So this is like a prima donna who feels entitled. And I wish I could find out who the guy is. Because first of all, man, there is somebody that needs to be red-pilled. I don't care how beautiful this lady is. I don't care how great the sex is. Nothing is worth that. Nothing. And if that's how you're going to start a relationship, can you imagine where you go from there? That ought to scare the shit out of everybody. So, the Bridezilla story. Then, this ran in, the Daily Mirror. And it was, the copy I've got here is actually from Fox News. I think Bored Panda picked it up too. And this one is a contract that a girl has with her boyfriend that includes 22 demands, okay? So it's like already we're back to a hostage negotiation. I got a gun against my head, okay? If you want me, these are the demands you got to meet, okay? Listen to some of these. These are all warning signs, flares, whatever you want to call it. So, number 1, you're not to have a single girl's phone number. Really? What about my mom? What about my sisters? What if we have kids and I have a daughter? What if my boss is female? I'm sorry, this is a deal breaker for me. Number 2, I love this one. You're not allowed to follow them on any social media, including Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter. That's interesting. I mentioned 5 children. 3 of them are girls. My 2 oldest ones are married. Daughter number 2, Rachel, told me something very interesting the other day, and she sought out somebody as a spouse that was like Dad. Okay? So my son-in-law, Sean, is very much like me. He's alpha. And she was telling me that her husband said she couldn't have any male friends on Facebook. And they're like, whoa. And I said, what did you say? She goes, he's right. And then we were talking about another couple that we know, younger couple in their age group that are married. And the guy, the husband in that case, has an awful lot of female friends on Facebook and Instagram. And which leads my daughter and her husband to believe that, well, maybe he's stepping outside or he's ready to step outside. All right, but with them, it's not my son-in-law controlling her, but setting boundaries. And she wants boundaries. When you're raising kids, kids want boundaries. I was talking with Jack Murphy about a story. My youngest daughter's 15. And she wanted to go to the homecoming. And usually with me, my rule is you don't start dating until you're 16. She's just a couple months away. She's not dating, she just wants to go to the homecoming. They're double dating. So she goes out with her friends to get a dress. Okay, that's mistake number one, because the parents should have been there. And compared to all of her other friends, her dress was the most conservative. But the picture was sent to me, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, what kind of a message does this send to young men, right? Now, the front, I didn't initially think was too bad, but it was a little bit low cut. My youngest brother, I've got two younger brothers. My youngest brothers are twins, and they're both Catholic priests. I'm the oldest of 13. So I sent this picture to my brother, Father James, and I said, what do you think? And he picks up the phone, he's laughing at me. He goes, are you serious? He said, if her chest was water, he goes, it'd be pouring out all over the floor. And then, but the front part wasn't the bad part. The bad part, you turn around, I don't know if you've seen what girls are wearing to school dances nowadays, but am I doing something? It's getting an echo. They try to expose the midriff, push the limits. The higher, the better. The lower cut, the better kind of stuff. So on the back of her dress, there's an open space, but the back is also lace, very, revealing, and it reminds me of lingerie, right? And I'm there like, whoa, this isn't going to work. What kind of a message does that send to a young guy? I know what message it sends to a young guy. And I said, unless I want a grandson out of wedlock or a grandchild out of wedlock, that's a no-go. And I set boundaries for her, and we sent her back to get another dress, which was much more appropriate. But she wanted boundaries. She wanted daddy to say no, so that I could give her shade, give her cover with her friends. You should have seen some of the freaking dresses the friends had on. The girl behind her that took her picture, I'm looking at it. First of all, it looks like a negligee, like the shortest negligee I've ever seen. Her mother loved it. Her mother thought, the other girl's mother, loved it, thought it was great. I can't imagine letting a kid out of the house, a girl out of the house, dressed like that. But that's what was going on. And again, what message does that send to young guys? I know the message it sends to young guys. That's why you're not wearing the dress, right? But kids want you to set boundaries. So I want to get back to this list here, too. Some of the other things. Oh, she says you're not allowed to hang out with Keegan, including his house or anywhere public. I don't know who Keegan is. As I started to read this list, I'm thinking, what is this, like a 15-year-old boy? Who would possibly sign off on this deal? Who would think this is okay? Who would agree to this? But apparently it's an adult. It says, and the reason I say that is because they talk about going out drinking. You can't go out drinking without me. Oh, really? That's new to me. It says, you're not to go to Honda without me. I'm not sure if that's a Civic or what. I don't know what that exactly is. You're not allowed to hang out with your friends more than 2 times a week. Says who? Says, you're just dating this chick. You're just dating this chick, and she's setting the ground rules. Rollo talks all the time about controlling the narrative, right? This chick right out of the gate is controlling the narrative. This guy like has been castrated from the start. You're not allowed to look at a single girl. What am I going to do? Pluck my eyes out? Wear blinders? What do you want me to do? If girls come up to you at any place or any time, you are to walk away. Are you kidding me? What if like I said before, what if my boss is female? What if my coworkers are female? I'm not allowed to talk to my mother, my sister anymore. What's the deal with that? Mo is not to hang out with us every time we hang out. I'm not sure who Mo is. Oh, you are not to ask for head. What am I supposed to beg? You're not allowed to ask for head. That's interesting. You lost me at number 9, honey. You lost me at number 9. This one. If anybody gets married, if you do a prenup, you got to get this one. I love this one. I wish I would have thought of this one. You are not to get mad at me about a single thing ever again. Wouldn't that be fantastic, huh? I want it in writing. And if you violate that at any time during the marriage, it's null and void. You're not allowed to be mad at me about a single thing ever again. Number 11's on friends. Oh, here's 12. You're not allowed to drink unless I am with you. I'm telling you, this is a chick that's going to be checking your phone. This is a control freak. This is somebody who has trust issues. She may have been cheated on before. She's damaged goods. Get out. Get out now. Oh, listen, this is the ultimate deal breaker for me. Number 13. I am allowed to do a phone check whenever I please. Really? Really? Here you go, honey. In a pig's eye. In a pig's eye. Somebody's checking your phone. That says they don't trust you. They don't trust you. They're looking for a reason. Maybe they've got trust issues. Maybe they've been cheated on before, whatever. Anybody's checking your phone. If you're an adult and somebody's checking your phone, that's a problem. That's a warning flare, a sign. Get out. If you're single, run as fast and as far away as you can. And don't look back lest you turn into a pillar of salt. 14, if we move in, this guy is crazy if he moves in with her, okay? If we move in, well, we don't have to worry about that, right? If we move in, there are never to be girls in our house. What if you have daughters? Do we have to give them up or give them away? How does that work? Let's see what else we had here. Oh, if we move in together, again, which is not going to happen, your friends will rarely be allowed over. If I catch you around girls, I will kill you. Who is it? Wait, Ahmed, the terrorist, the terrifying terrorist. I kill you. I kill you. It's some guy, when I read stuff like this, it can't be real, right? This could be like from The Onion. Nobody would be this stupid. But there's guys out there that are willing to compromise just to be with women. And some of the stuff is just over the top. It's crazy. Oh, you are not to ditch me for your friends. That's a pet peeve with me. I remember high school, college, and you probably experienced this yourself. A lot of times you'll have friends, they meet that special someone, and all of a sudden, it's like they fell off the planet. You never hear from them. If somebody makes you break off friendships, relationships, to be with them, again, that's a warning flare. Get out. Now, if you do that on your own volition, that's another thing, okay? But if somebody's demanding that, making you do that, that's going to be a problem. Austin, don't know who Austin is, does not control when I hang out with you. Oh, I love this one. We are to go on a legit date once every 2 weeks at least. Now, I'm not sure what constitutes legit, but once every 2 weeks. Does this not sound like a hostage demand to you? Seriously. This does not sound like a relationship. Here's another one of my favorites. Number 20. If I say jump, you say, how high, princess? Got news for you. White guys can't jump. Sorry, I'm out. Oh, and this is what I like, because I got in a conversation about this with Rollo on one of my programs. You are to make sure you tell me you love me once a day, at least, so I know that you're not messing around. More on that one in a minute. And 22. You are never to take longer than 10 minutes to text me back. Yeah, okay, yeah. The love thing, I love you. So I had Rollo on the program, and what's really weird is I expected initially, when I started bringing him on about a year ago, women would loathe him, and guys would love him. It was the exact opposite. Women loved him, agreed with almost everything he said. There were guys, tradcons for the most part, who took issue with him. In fact, I had two people back in Tulsa that wanted me to cut my ties with Rollo, not bring him on the program anymore. You know why? He talked about his notch count. His notch count, he said he had 40 women, okay? And that was a deal breaker. I shouldn't be bringing somebody like that on the program. I said, first of all, you don't even have the context. I said, he's been married for like 21 or 22 years, same woman, right? That was back in his single days. But that's still, well, he's bragging about it. How many women did he get pregnant? How many STDs did he get? All this crap because of something he said from his past. And it's guys, it's not the women, it's guys that are doing that, okay? So I had this conversation about how often should you tell your girlfriend, your wife, your significant other, your partner, love that word, partner, right? And how often should you tell them you love them, right? And the reason I asked that was because we've all seen older couples, could be married 40, 50, 60 years, and they say, I love you, but it doesn't mean anything anymore. It doesn't mean what it initially meant. It becomes like noise. If you say anything too much, whether you say you love someone or you tell them they're beautiful, they're fantastic, if you heap too much praise on it, it becomes empty. It becomes an empty vessel. It's meaningless. It doesn't mean anything anymore. And if you don't say it at all, that's a problem too. So where do we go? What's the balance, right? So I asked Rollo, and this is one of the shows where the women sort of turned on him. And he has a 2/3 rule. For every 3 I love yous she gives you, you only give her 2 back. And that drove the ladies crazy on the program. What was one of the lines was, what kind of, some of the language I can't use, but what kind of a little person would keep count of stuff like that? Does he have spreadsheets on that kind of stuff, But I was trying to find some balance, because sometimes if you heap too much praise on or say things like that, it becomes meaningless. And if you don't, it can hurt them too. And especially with kids. It's the one area where I disagreed with him. I think he applied that to children too. As a father, I don't see a situation where I would ever hold back telling a child that I love them. That relationship is very different than a man and a woman. It's a relationship where you're building them, you're growing them. So, anyways, that's a little bit of what I do on the radio on a regular basis, where I try to incorporate stories like this into the program. Now, I want to get into a couple of other things with you too today, starting with testosterone. And I've had a couple of conversations here with people about testosterone. For some reason, people think I know something about testosterone. I don't know what it is, a vibe I give off or what. But anyways, that aside, how many guys here know what their T level is? What's your T level? Do you know your T level? Put your hand up if you know your T level, okay? A lot of you don't, okay? I'm going to tell you a little story here about my dad. My dad got prostate cancer, and there's a variety of treatments for prostate cancer. One of the treatments my dad opted for was a series of shots, which completely shut down his body's production of testosterone. And when that happens in a guy, when your testosterone goes down, your estrogen goes up, okay? And what I noticed was it completely altered my father's personality. My dad was the strong, silent, stoic kind of guy. When they shut down his testosterone, he became emotional, moody. It just wasn't dad. It wasn't dad anymore. He was easily agitated. In fact, I joked around with him. I said, "Are you watching a lot of Lifetime TV with Ma?" He didn't think that was that funny, right? But that told me a lot about the importance. Here's a line for you. Testosterone maketh the man. You can quote me on that. Testosterone maketh the man. That hormone is so vital, so important to who you are and how you think. Now, I'm in talk radio, and hormone replacement therapy, testosterone replacement therapy is marketed heavily, okay? And they market it mostly as a libido enhancer, which it is. And that's a great selling point, but there's so much more that it does, okay? I've been on hormone replacement therapy, testosterone replacement therapy. People think I do it for muscle building. Yeah, that's nice. It's not the libido, that's nice. I do it for up here in the head. I noticed when I was about 45, 46, that I didn't feel like myself anymore. I was getting increasingly anxious. I tried to explain it to my doctor. I said, I feel like I've been drinking coffee, and that caffeine tension just builds. Plus, I had been a competitive power lifter for a number of years, and I started getting just freaky injuries when I was training. I was doing speed squats in the gym one day, and it was a very light weight. It was 315, light for me as far as that goes. And something snapped on like my third or fourth set. And I thought I tore my quad. Actually, there's a clear, almost like a package that wraps your muscle, the fascia. Mine ruptured, and the quadricep came out. It's like, what the hell is that all about? So I went to my doctor, and he said, let me run a hormone panel on you. And there's a couple things you need to know. When you go to get checked, okay, don't just ask for your testosterone level, total testosterone. There's another number you need, free testosterone. That is what your body utilizes. If your doctor won't do both, go find another doctor. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. They'll also check your estradiol, which is estrogen. If that's high, that can cause problems as well. Another thing you need to check is your IGF-1. That's your growth hormone levels. Well, my testosterone came back low, and my IGF-1 came back low. And that's why I wasn't recuperating. That's why I wasn't recuperating between workouts, and that's why I was just getting freaky injuries. And once they get you on the testosterone, it's almost like a religious experience. It's like you're born again. You feel probably 6 to 8 weeks in, you feel like, wow, I feel like I used to do. I feel like the old me. Now, here's another thing they don't tell you. When you go in for, especially if you're married, okay, if you're married, let's say you go in for hormone replacement therapy. Say you're a couple, I don't know, 45 to 50. If Papa goes in for hormone replacement therapy, in about 6 to 8 weeks, he's going to have the libido of a 28-year-old. Meanwhile, Mama is headed toward menopause, or maybe has already gone through it. Those are two ships that never pass. They never pass. That causes problems. So what they're doing now is a lot of the better places are not requiring, but suggesting that if you're married, or even if you're in a long-term relationship with a girlfriend, that you go in as a couple and see what's available for both of you. Have both of you get your levels checked. And now when it comes to the female hormone replacement therapy, it's a little more complicated. It's a little more complex. But for the guys, you know, it's marketed for libido, but it's more than that. It's for your head upstairs. In fact, a couple of people, I was telling them, I had a guest on my program, Dr. Jim Meehan. And I bring him on every week, and we talk about a lot of different things. This week, he brought in a book. It's called Estrogeneration. That's Estrogeneration. This is a book I highly recommend everybody get their hands on. It's how estrogen makes us fat, sick, and infertile. It's by Anthony G. Jay, and Jay is spelled J-A-Y. And this book talks about a lot of things. Some of the things that I would expect them to talk about. For example, soy. If you're a guy over the age of 40, avoid soy like the plague. Unless you want to sport a pair of man boobs and some nice love handles to go along with it. Okay? Soy is kryptonite. It's toxic. It's the last thing you need in your body. In fact, when we did this, a guy calls in, he goes, what about isolate soy? What part of soy is no good, don't you understand? Okay? So I've got a friend at the gym who is probably about 45. He works out religiously. He almost exclusively does cardio. He comes in, he probably weighs about 275, beats himself up, you know, either on the treadmill or the stair climber or something like that, hour and a half every day. He's not losing weight. In fact, he's getting fatter. Okay? He doesn't understand what the problem was or is. So he comes up to me at the gym, and he's all excited because he's got something new, and he wants to know if I think it's good. And it's a big tub from GNC. I won't name the vitamin store. I'll just give out the acronym, GNC. And he hands it to me with a big smile. He says, is this any good? And I look at it. It's got soy in it. And I said, well, it depends what good is. I said, if you want to grow your boobs bigger, yeah, this is the thing to take. And what he needs to be doing, and some of the other people that are here that are into training, AJ Cortez and others will tell you, if you're over 40, you need to emphasize lifting free weights. That's what's going to be really good for you long term. Yes, you need cardio, some cardio, but you can kill you. If you're a guy and you weigh over 200 pounds and you're still running on a regular basis, whether it's on hard pavement, a track, even a treadmill, sooner or later it's going to catch up with you. It's either going to be your knees or your hips, okay? It comes with a price, comes with a cost. And the free weights, getting into the free weights with some cardio is the way to go to get yourself in better shape. And hormone replacement therapy can play a role in that as well. But this estrogeneration, okay? So they're talking about soy in there. Now here's the one I completely was caught off guard by. Flax. Flax. Flax is sold as healthy. Flax is supposed to be great for you, good for your heart, good for if you're taking flaxseed, good for elimination, all sorts of things. And it's rich in omega-3s. Well, flax is also another big offender when it comes to estrogen. They've got everything laid out in this book. If you're a guy over 40 in particular, and you want to avoid anything that can raise your estrogen, you need this book. They got the whole list in there. Again, it's called Estrogeneration, How Estrogen Makes Us Fat, Sick, and Infertile by Anthony G. Jay. And the last name is spelled J-A-Y. Looking at my time here. Okay, so I want to talk about mindset. Here in the United States, well, in North America just in general, guys, men, it doesn't matter what generation you're in, we've been trained to think that women are the prize. Women are the prize. It's the Disney fairy tale, you know, your Sleeping Beauty, your Snow White, whatever Disney figure you want to pick, okay? And that girls are the prize. I'm here today to tell you something radically different. I'm calling for a paradigm shift in your thinking. And once you get into this paradigm shift, things will begin to change for you. The girls or the women are not the prize. You are the prize. If you're a guy, you're the prize. Women often complain that they're seen as sex objects, okay? Guys are success objects. And here's the interesting part. You need to invest in yourself. Everybody that's here today is already doing that, okay? You're making an investment, a big financial investment in yourself, in improving yourself. That is going to increase what Rollo calls your sexual market value. But you need to realize that you're the prize, you're the catch. It's not the other way around as we've been trained to think over the years. And once you make that shift, things are going to begin to radically change for you. Now, when I started reading Rollo's books, there were a couple things that jumped out at me that really, it's like, whoo, made me think. So one of his first clients that he worked with was a guy, and I may mess up the story a little bit, but it's okay because I'll keep the important things in here. A guy that was about 65 years old, been married for, 45 years, something like that. His kids are grown up. They're out of the house. He's in a sexless, loveless marriage. And, so here he is at the tail end, doesn't really have a lot of time left for whatever reason. I'm not sure if there were some health issues or whatever. But he's done everything the right way. He's done everything the way we've been taught to do it. Men have been taught to do it. I don't know, at 65, he may have been one of the guys that waited until he got married to have sex. He's been faithful to the same woman for 45 years, okay? He's always taken care of his wife. He's been the breadwinner, the bread earner. He's taking care of the kids. The kids are grown up. They're out of the house. Maybe they don't want to talk to him anymore. Who knows, right? But he's still with the same lady because of a commitment he made 45 years ago when he was probably 20 years old, right? So Rollo raises this question, and it's a question that upsets a lot of people, but it's a question every guy needs to ask himself. And I'm going into the future because I don't want you to get yourself in that position. I want you to avoid, especially the guys here that are in their 20s and 30s, avoid this mistake, okay? Avoid this mistake. So here's the guy. He's been true to his word. He's been faithful. Maybe she's been just an absolute bitch to him. The marriage has been sexless for a long, long time. And what does he get at the end? What does he get? A freaking participation trophy. Congratulations. You fought the good fight. Here's the hole in the ground. Climb in. Let's hope something's on the other side. I don't want you to be that guy. I don't want you to be that guy. You know? So the question is raised, who do you have a greater duty to? Who do you have a greater responsibility to? Does he have a greater responsibility to the woman that he married 45 years ago, or does he have a greater responsibility to himself? And I read that and I'm thinking, wow, that's deep. That's deep. The answer, by the way, a little cheat sheet here. The answer is you have the greater responsibility to yourself. You've got to take care of yourself first. You've got to work on yourself first. You've got to improve yourself first. You've got to make yourself number one. Now, some people, especially women, will go, oh, man, that is so selfish. That is so selfish. But compare and contrast here. How many times have you heard women tell other women, honey, you got to take care of yourself. You need to take care of yourself because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of everybody else, your husband, your kids, that kind of stuff. That's perfectly okay. That's empathy. That's sympathy, right? But if a guy says it, oh, he is a selfish, narcissistic bastard. But the reality is your greater duty, your greater responsibility is to yourself. Because if you don't take care of you, and by take care, let's talk about what that means. So Rollo talks about sexual market value, when women peak, when guys peak. He is of the belief that guys shouldn't even think about getting in a long-term relationship or even getting married until they're, I think he goes as high as 35, okay? I'll compromise a little, 30. In this day and age, 30. And there's a reason for that. Women mature more quickly than men do. And I'm not just talking about physically, okay? Guys, there's a lot of guys, and you know them. Some of you in here may be them, that are in their 20s that are still, I don't know, in their embryonic phase. You still haven't figured out who the hell you are, where you want to go, what you want to do, okay? If you don't have the answers to those questions, if you don't know who you are, if you don't know where you want to go, if you don't know what you want to do, you have no freaking business getting yourself married or in a long-term relationship. And your sexual market value is jack squat if you can't answer those questions. There's a lot of guys, younger guys, and I know millennials get picked on a lot, who don't really care about a lot of things. I mean, they'll go to work if they work at all. They'll just put in their 8 hours, whatever, their 40 hours a week. They're more happy just to go home, play video games, or maybe they're still living with their parents. It's like they didn't grow up. And what we've done here in this society is we have created a culture, especially with parachute parents, where we have what I call perpetual adolescence. You don't have to grow up anymore. You don't. You don't have to grow up. And there's a lot of people out there that haven't grown up, people that just stagnate. Share a quick story with you. I'm a big reader of books. And anytime I'm around leaders, whether it's political leaders, business leaders, any guest I have on the program, I always ask them, sometimes on air, sometimes off, what are you reading? Okay? What are you reading? Because I have found that really successful people are readers. They're avid readers. They're always reading books, okay? Reading's an amazing thing. There's a guy by the name of Brian Tracy, Canadian, who's written a couple of books, two that I would recommend. One is Goals, how to get everything you ever wanted faster than you ever thought you could. It's not success porn. It's not pie in the sky dreaming. It tells you how to get things done and how to take action. And the other one, which was an epiphany for me, Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life. Both of those by Brian Tracy. And they get into the mindset. So guys need to be working on themselves, especially in their 20s and even in their early 30s, becoming who they're going to be. And if you haven't done that, you've got no business getting into a relationship with anyone. So Rollo's got an article, it's up on the Rational Mail, it's called The Paradox of Commitment. And it's something every man should ponder. And it's a question only you can answer for yourself. But society shames you. If you put yourself first, you're bad. That's toxic masculinity. If a woman puts herself first, that's good. That's the feminine imperative. Oh, let's see. I was talking about the paradigm shift before, a fundamental change in approach or underlying assumptions. Our culture teaches that women are the prize, and that's backwards. We've got to reprogram your thinking. You are the prize. You're the high-value male. Oh, here's another one. Do not And if I get invited back next year, I'll have a story to tell for you. Do not under any circumstance date or God forbid, marry a single mother. Whoa, 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 whoa. Let me define that for you too, okay? Single mom used to mean something, but it means something very different today. Single mom used to mean a woman who had a child out of wedlock. That's specifically what I'm talking about, okay? Do not date, do not marry a single mom for a variety of reasons, okay? First of all, if there's children involved, it is a cruel trick to play on them. Rich Cooper talks about being in a relationship where I think it only lasted about 3 years with a woman. He got emotionally connected with those kids, and when it breaks up, she pulls the plug. That's like cruel and inhumane treatment, not only to Rich, but to the kids as well. And the other thing is, no matter how you handle this, okay, even if you marry the woman, even if you adopt the child as your own, okay, the reality is you're always going to be raising somebody else's son or daughter. Then the other thing to add to that is a lot of people go, well, yeah, but once they're 18, they're out of the house. I'm here to tell you that ain't the way it works. That's not the way it works. Especially if you've got a bad apple. If you wind up getting a bad apple, that bad apple can haunt you till he's 30, 40, 50. He can be a thorn in your side for the rest of your life. I'm telling you what to avoid. So in Rich and Rollo talk a lot about that too. And now, single mom means something different. Single mom can mean somebody who's been married multiple times, has kids maybe from different relationships. But when I'm talking about it, I'm talking specifically about a woman who's had a child out of wedlock. There used to be a societal sense of shame attached to that. That was bad. You didn't do that. All of that changed right around probably, I want to say, early 80s with Madonna, Papa Don't Preach. Then it became a really cool thing. Having a kid out of wedlock, that's stylish. That's fashionable. You're in with the in crowd. Everybody wants to be stylish, right? Well, there's consequences that come along with that. Plus, it's cruel to the kids. It's not fair to the kids. Rollo talks about controlling the frame. I've got a phrase I use on the program all the time. He who controls the language controls the debate. Okay? I'll give you a perfect example. Abortion. I don't want to get into a discussion of abortion today, but going back to Roe versus Wade, the people that were pro-abortion quickly took control of the language. You see, they're not pro-abortion. They're pro-choice. That sounds great. I mean, who would be against choices? Well, unless, of course, one of the choices is killing the baby, right? And the people that were pro-life, the people that wanted to spare the life of the child, they're anti-abortion. They're anti-abortion. That's bad. That's bad. That's a perfect example of somebody controlling the language and controlling the debate. And the pro-life community has really been on the run trying to make up ground ever since. But they got it right there out of the gate. That's something that has applications in your life as well. I want to do more on that too. One of the things I love. Let me see if I want to put that one up there. All right. In fact, if you go to my Twitter account at twitter.com/PC1170, this is one of my favorites. Don't listen to what people say. Watch what they do. Don't listen to what people say. Watch what they do. Why? Because our actions always, without fail, betray us. Always. I love it when politicians talk to me about, we're going to be the most transparent administration ever. Let me translate that for you. You're not going to know jack shit about what we're doing, okay? People can tell you all sorts of things, you know. I love you, I want you, I need you. But what do their actions say? Always watch people's actions. Their actions always betray them. They always give them away. People could whisper all sorts of sweet nothings in your ear, and what they do is a completely different story. Completely different story. was another phrase I wanted to get in here, and I'm looking around for it. Bear with me for 1 second, please. Oh, this is it. This is Rolo gold. And you'll also find it on the Paradox of Commitment article. This one, when I read this, it was like a 2x4 in the face. And they're like, holy crap, man. Whatever you cannot say no to is your master and makes you its slave. Let me say that one again. Whatever you cannot say no to is your master and makes you its slave. So what is it you can't say no to? You know, there's so many things out there that are drugs. For some people, war is a drug. For some people, sex is a drug. For some people, drugs are drugs, right? So what is it you can't say no to? Whatever you can't say no to is going to control you. And if it's sex, okay, if it's sex, we're almost back. We tried to figure out how that kid could sign off on the 22 demands by the chick. Well, if sex is your God, okay, sex is your God, it controls you. You're going to sign that because that's what you have to have. That's what you need. That's what you want. Let me go off on a little tangent here, too. Socrates' speech the other morning made me start thinking about what's really important. And I can't remember whose website I was on. It might have been, I think it was Roosh. So I'm looking on the side, and there's books I can buy. How to date a porn star. I'm going, okay, why would I want to do that? Or how to date a stripper, right? I'm going, why would I want to do that? That's like going, you know, how to buy a high mileage car. When I worked here in Orlando, I worked for 540 WFLA. That's their talk station. And there's an FM station. They got the monsters in the morning. And because of the fact that we're all in the same building, almost daily there were strippers in the building. They would bring a cavalcade of strippers coming through. Almost every one of those girls was a train wreck. There was something wrong. They were damaged goods. They had been molested as a kid by their father, someone, somewhere along the line. Most of them were drug addicts. And I got news for you. At 6 o'clock in the morning, they look like shit, especially without the makeup, because they probably didn't go to bed until about 3. But the idea that somebody wants to date them, you know, other than to say, yeah, I did. You know, that's Donald Trump with Stormy Daniels. You know, come on. You've got Melania Trump. She's a 10 plus, right? Why would you want to be with Stormy Daniels? She's an aging porn star. And I love the way they try to dress her up on TV. You know, adult entertainment performer. You know, like it's a noble profession or something like that. But if I've been disappointed with anything with Donald Trump, if the Stormy Daniels thing is true, that's where it is, right there. It's like, Donald, come on, man. Come on. Seriously? What were you thinking? Apparently it was right after Melania had her son, too, or their son, which was a little weird. A little weird. So the controlling stuff, I lost my train of thought there, with, the girls. Okay, so Socrates' speech. So what do you want? What do you want? Why are you here? What do you want? What are you looking for? What's your drug? Okay. Do you want a 10? Do you want a 10? Is that what you're looking for? When it comes to women, when it comes to chicks, do you want a 10? Okay. Well, 10s come with a price tag. Okay. And although they might look good, you know, it's arm candy, might make you look good. You know, when I look at Donald Trump, I saw a picture of him next to his first wife. He looks old. Saw a picture of him next to Melania. He looks a lot younger. Melania is window dressing. Melania compliments Donald Trump. She makes him look younger. She makes him look better. Okay. But what do you want? What do you want? Do you want a 10? Okay. Is that what's going to make you happy? Do you have any idea what it's like to have a 10? If you want to get a 10, you should probably talk to somebody who has a 10. I don't. Okay. I don't want a 10. Trust me, buddy. I don't want a 10. Okay. You need to talk to somebody who's got a 10 and find out what the price tag is that comes with that. If you watch any of the shows, you know, Housewives of Orange County, any stuff like that, those are women that at one time were considered trophy wives. I'm not sure what century, but they were trophy. And you look at them. We say that women are sex objects, but they can be so much more. things you need to look at when you're out there, and I tell this to my sons, temperament. And I'm not talking about temperament like we do with pets. You know, that dog doesn't have the temperament to be around kids or something like that. Their temperament. What kind of a woman is she? Is she a drama queen? That's a no-go. I mean, that's just going to create all sorts of headaches for you. Is she high maintenance? You know, you start breaking down. I was listening to some of the ladies that I work with in the radio business. We're in the sales department. And they were talking about what it takes to get them to look good to go out to sell the radio, which is amazing because radio you can only hear, but they got to look good to go out and sell it. But you start with the nails. You start with the eyelashes. You go with the hair, all the makeup, everything that goes on, the outfits, the clothing. Man, you're talking a lot of cash just to make her look good to go out on the street. And in the drama, the social circles, one of the things I tell my boys, and one of the things I used to do when I was dating, a lot of guys want to meet the dad, right? Not me. I want to meet the mom. I want to meet the mom for a couple of reasons. First of all, a buddy of mine, Joe Wachter, longtime mentor, used to tell us when we were kids that if you're going to date somebody, get a good look at the mom. Why? Well, because in 20 years, that's what she's going to look like. And I said, Joe, you got to be kidding me, man. And lo and behold, we had a family that lived down the street from me, and their youngest daughter was the same age as me. Gorgeous, gorgeous. Just, I mean, she was a 10. She was a 10, right? Just drop dead gorgeous. In fact, all the girls were. Fast forward 20 years later, I stopped over at my parents' house, and there, standing before me, was what I thought was the ghost of her mother. Honest to God, she looked exactly like her mom, and I'm thinking, how the hell is that possible? How is that possible? Now, that doesn't happen with every woman. But the other thing I want to meet the mom for, and I tell this to my boys, is, first of all, mom's got to like me, okay? If mom doesn't like me, that's going to be a deal breaker, because that's going to cause problems if you're going to get married, even if you're going to be in a long-term relationship. Then I want to find out about mom. Is mom one of these moms that's overbearing, that's going to be at the house all the time, that's going to be meddling in my life, okay? Because if any of those, the answers to any of those are yes, sorry, got to get out. Got to get out. Those are all danger signs, warning signs. So when Socrates was talking about, you know, women, what are you looking for? If you're looking for that 10, you better make sure that's what you want, okay? And you better make sure that you're willing to pay the price. And is it really worth all the time, energy, and effort? Because of my job, I've had an opportunity to be around a lot of alpha males, business leaders, you know, people like that. And it's amazing. When I went to my dentist a couple weeks ago, it's in a rather affluent community, and there's tennis courts right across the street. And I see 3 gorgeous tan Barbie dolls over there, all trophy wives. You know, they're little Beamers and they're little Mercedes. Meanwhile, daddy's off at work killing himself. And who knows, they're probably banging their tennis instructor, right? But is that really what you want? Is that really what you need? And are you willing to pay the price? Or do you want somebody, here's the deal. If you're marrying a woman, or even getting in a long-term relationship with a woman based solely on looks, based solely on her sexual performance, I got some bad news for you. It's got a limited shelf life. And when it's gone, what are you going to have? What are you going to have? What's left? You need somebody that's more than that. You need somebody you're compatible with. You need somebody who you have something in common with other than sex. You need somebody that's going to be a friend, somebody that's going to be a good mother, somebody that's going to nurture your children. And the chick you met at the bar the other night that's crazy in bed probably isn't that person. Probably isn't that person. I'm just checking the time here because I want to leave some Q&A for you guys too. Oh, I got to tell the Rolo story. Oh, boy. So I had a couple people that want me to get rid of Rolo. You quit bringing him on the program Friday, or I am out. In fact, somebody even wrote my boss and said, either get rid of Rolo or get rid of Campbell. And I say, is it too much to ask for both, right? So I go on the following Friday, and I told Rolo I would say this here. So I've been on the radio for 25 years, long time. Interviewed some very famous people. Had a lot of high-profile guests on the shows over the years. Good guys, bad guys, right? Rollo Tomassi is the only person I can tell you, I can look you in the eye, okay, and say, Rollo has saved lives. What am I talking about? I've had two, and there's only two that I know about. There may be more. Two guys called one called me off air because he's sort of high profile in the community, doesn't want this publicly known, his name known. The other guy sent us a PM when Rollo was on. Two guys that were about to pull a Kurt Cobain. They were going through the express checkout lane because they had both been zeroed out by their wife. They were in Anthony Bourdain territory. They were seriously thinking about committing suicide. One was much closer than the other. But because of Rollo, listening to him on the program, subsequently reading his books, okay, they found out what happened to them, how it happened. It made sense out of something that didn't make sense. Both of these guys were between 40, 45, businessmen. One's got some political stuff going on too, but business guys who were out there building their dream life for their significant other and their kids. Meanwhile, you know, I guess the romance is gone, the desire is gone. He says, genuine desire cannot be negotiated. The thrill was gone, as B.B. King used to say. So they're out on the side getting a little other action, and the husbands find out. They're destroyed. Their whole life's been turned upside down. And then even when they get into the courts, they still lose. They're screwed. So Rollo Tomassi saved their lives. I can't say that about any other guest I ever had on the program. And I know that he's had people come up to him at the 21 convention before who tell him point blank, you saved my life. Because of you, I'm still alive. That's a very powerful testimony. Very powerful testimony. And that's why I'm going to continue to bring him on the program every Friday. And if you can't listen in real time, we put the podcast up there at talkradio1170.com. But if you go to Rollo's page, he's got a little Talk Radio 1170 icon. You click that on. All of the programs are archived there in the order that we've recorded them. He's been coming on now for, I think it's going to be a year in November. So that concludes my speech. If you've got questions, let's line up.
So, hey, Pat. Thanks for the speech.
It's right here.
I'm here on your left side.
What's your name?
Andre.
Okay.
So, I'm curious. If you have a younger daughter, if she's like 20, 21, 22, and she starts dating a 35-year-old guy, how would you react? I'm just curious.
Well, given the bodybuilder story from 2 weeks ago, not real good. I don't know. You know, it's interesting because I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We are the buckle of the Bible Belt. And in certain religious circles, in fact, in the Pentecostal church, there's a lot of situations like that where you'll have a girl maybe just graduates from high school, and all of a sudden she marries an older guy that's maybe 30. 35 is pushing it a little bit, 30, 31, 32. It's not that unusual. It's almost like an arranged marriage through the church. And on one hand, I guess it fits some of Rollo's criteria, that the guy is older. Hopefully he's successful. He's found out who he is. And at the same time, the girl being younger, that age difference, is perfect for childbearing. With me, though, as dad, I want to meet the guy first. It's all going to be based on what the guy's like. But it's really not that unusual in certain circles. Does that answer the question?
Pat, great program. I'm a new fan of yours.
What's your name?
Kevin.
Kevin.
I've been having on testosterone replacement for about 8 years now. Axiron, very expensive. I switched to the injections.
Right.
It's a lot cheaper. The nurse who showed me how to do the injections asked me about estrogen, if I had it tested.
Right.
I've never had it tested. A month later, I had my testosterone was high and my estradiol was high. Should I be concerned?
How high was the estradiol?
The range is 20 to 40. I was at 46.
No, that's not super high. Hold on. In fact, I jotted down those numbers down here because that was something I was supposed to talk about with the exact numbers. I want to answer that question. Yeah, where'd I put it? Anyway, here's the deal. With your total testosterone, the number is supposed to be somewhere between 300, and they recently dialed it down to 890. By the way, this is not medical advice, okay? If I had an MD by my name, it would be medical advice. The number for your total testosterone is supposed to be somewhere between 300 and 890. Those are the new guidelines, okay? When I started hormone replacement therapy, they would take you as high as 1200. You will find some doctors that will still take you in the 1000, 1100, or 1200 range, all right? That's where I like to be. That's the optimal level for me. You don't want to go higher than that, and here's why. Because that's when the side effects start to compound, all right? Then the other thing you need is your free testosterone. That's what your body can actually utilize. And those numbers, don't quote me on this, but they're somewhere between 40 and 244. Estradiol, I think the cutoff is 44. I would not be concerned about that if it was up at 100 or maybe more, okay? When you're doing testosterone replacement therapy, you really need three things. Testosterone, okay? Followed by Arimidex, which is an anti-estrogen. It's actually a drug they use on women who've had breast cancer. And if you're on a low dose, let's say you're on 150 milligrams of testosterone cypionate per week, a doctor usually will put you on 0.5 milligrams of Arimidex twice a week, Monday and Thursday. That keeps your estrogen levels under control, okay? And the other thing they want to put you on is HCG to keep the gonads healthy, all right? Those three things in conjunction are what they like to get you on. There's some other clinics around that will also include growth hormone. And I will tell you this, real growth hormone is expensive in the States. In fact, I was telling Rich Cooper, for about an 8-week run, it's, I want to say about maybe $1,200. So you got to be well healed, okay? But here's the deal. I remember Sylvester Stallone. Everybody knows how he looks at 71, 72. Anybody want to look like him when you're 71 or 72? I do. Since he's 40, he told this to Matt Lauer on the Today Show when Matt was still there. Since he's been 40, he says, in his opinion, every guy in the United States over the age of 40 should be on two things: testosterone replacement therapy and human growth hormone. Okay. Now here's the downside. Here's the caveat, the warning with growth hormone. I don't know anything about your family background, your genetic makeup, okay? You could have dormant cancer cells lying in your body, okay? You could wake them up. You could be pouring, gasoline on them with growth hormone. So that's something that everybody has to take into consideration, think about individually, and discuss with your doctor. But there's a lot of clinics now that are doing all of those things together. I've seen guys that have been on both, okay? The testosterone replacement with growth hormone, there's a synergy there. It's like, wow. The two combined, the two separate are okay. The two combined is like, wow. Then that's why Stallone looks the way he does. All right, thank you.
Yeah, when you talked about people refusing to grow up, it raised this question for me that's happening nowadays. My grandfather walked 2 miles to school each way. I can remember being left in the car alone with the motor running, and I've lived to tell the tale. Nowadays, if you let your kids do anything unsupervised, somebody's going to call Child Protective Services. Yeah. What can we do about this?
Well, what I'm talking about is guys that are already over 18, okay, that should be moving towards adulthood. And I think what you're talking about there too, that we've got a lot of this what I call parachute parenting, where they're monitoring everything, and there's overkill too. There's such a thing as balance. There's certain things you need to be aware of, certain things you need to watch with your kids, but at some point you got to gently nudge them out of the nest. And in a lot of cases, that's not happening. And parents really are enabling what I call perpetual adolescence. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's probably the best I can do right now.
I got a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old boy. Can you talk more about strategies to introduce this body of knowledge to young men?
The 17-year-old, I would put the rational male in his hands, for starters. And that may not go over real well with the wife, but that's okay. I'm serious. It's the game plan. First of all, boys are being taught, Rollo likes to say, as defective girls in our schools. That's how they're treated, Okay? It's true. I used to be a teacher. I used to be a math teacher years ago. And when I start thinking back, I'm going, especially in grade school for me, K through 8, it was almost all female teachers. Now, I was lucky in that when I went to high school, I went to a preparatory high school. It was all male teachers. So I didn't get the female imperative in high school. I got guys, alpha guys, teaching me. And that made a big difference. But with the boys, the 17-year-old in particular, I would get the rational male in his hands, and you're going to have to walk him through some of the offensive language, which may not be permitted at your house. But the truths that are in that book hold true. What do we got next?
Sam Botta.
I've heard of you. You
Can't
read
imagine
books. How you doing, buddy? He came out of the hospital just to see us today. It's a true story.
5 weeks in inpatient care. Just got here. On the testosterone thing, zinc citrate replaces Arimidex for getting rid of estrogen. Tesamorelin for body fat. It's a peptide. You want to write it down.
Okay.
The only place to get it is Empower Pharmacy in Houston. You need one of 2 doctors to get it. Could you spell that? Tesamorelin. Shreds body fat. What took me 6 months to lose this year, I lost 70 pounds this year.
Wow.
If I had taken tesamorelin, it would have taken 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Absolutely.
Whew.
So a doctor in Madison, Alabama, Gary Adams, MD. Just write his name down. Gary Adams,
how
MD.
much of that do you use?
Tesamorelin?
Yeah.
I'm not on it yet. To find out how much, you needed to read Jay Campbell's books. Jay Campbell and Jim Brown. TOT Revolution.
Okay.
And I only know all this because, I died from a massive stroke a few years ago, etc. So I'm on the stroke protocol, which includes everything that he just mentioned, but it also has a side effect of making you into more of a man than you could ever imagine being. It'll turn you into Ivan Throne.
Wow.
Can't have too many of those. So what I came up here to talk to you about, or to ask you was, so in 2004, I was there when Ryan Seacrest, who doesn't have your voice, replaced my good friend Rick Dees, who has a voice similar to yours. And for a little while in my voice acting life, not using my real name, I consulted stations all over the country, radio stations everywhere.
Right.
And every single show that was popular across the country, somebody that sounded like you was replaced with somebody that sounded like Ryan Seacrest or less. So what is it we are going to do together to get every radio station morning show that panders only to women to start talking on air to the guys that are on stage here? Well, you're the only one.
Well, here a couple things. First of all, the demographics with talk radio. With political talk radio, just talk radio as you know it, whether it's Rush Limbaugh, myself, Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, people like that, the audience tends to skew male. My audience is about 70% male. It can be 60 to 70% male, 30 to 40% female. So it's already skewed towards males, but the reality is a lot of guys are afraid to say some of the stuff that I've said today. In fact, some of the guys would be out the door if they said what I said today. I just happen to work for a really good company that's privately owned in Oklahoma. They believe in me. They're happy with my product. They're happy with what I do. But in a lot of corporate radio, whether it's Clear Channel, well, it's iHeart now, or Cox, it's the people that are in charge. The PC police are there, and they're gonna put the kibosh on somebody like me. Do we have any more?
All right, everyone, let's give it up.
All right.
Thank you very much.
What he represents is patriarchy. We're here to do work as men, as patriarchs. There's nothing more natural than being a father.
Welcome back to the 21 Convention 2019 Special Patriarch Edition in Orlando, Florida. Our next speaker is a returning speaker to the 21 Convention. He is a legendary talk radio host. He is the co-host of the Red Pill 101 with Rollo Tomasi, and he's a proud patriarch of 5. Please help me welcome Pat Campbell to the stage.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, buddy. Yep. Good morning. How is everybody? For those of you that aren't familiar with me, I'm a radio talk show host currently in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I've been living there for about 11 years. I'm married. I've been married for 27 years. I've got 5 kids ranging in age from 26 to 16. My baby just turned 16. I've got 2 boys, 3 girls, so I know a little something about raising kids, especially in this day and age. And I've learned a lot along the way, and hopefully I can share some of that information with fathers that are here or fathers-to-be that are here as well. And I'm also a recovering tradcon, thanks to Rollo Tomasi. About 2 years ago now, I read the book. I picked up the book. I started reading his blog, or his website, The Rational Male, some of his articles. I went and got the Audible book. I liked it. I bought the book. I can't tell you how many times I've read the book, how many copies of the book I've given away, and how many times I've listened to Audible and the other 2 books, and I can't wait for the 4th book to come out, which I'm writing the foreword to, which is about religion. And that's where guys like me come in. I'm the goon squad for the religious, okay? The tradcon. I finally woke up one day and realized, you've been played. You've been played. People like me are the guys that keep the other guys in line. And I want to wake everybody up to that today, because it woke me up. So the title of my talk today is, what is the role of the husband and the father? And underneath you see it says, I'm not your friend. I'm your father. From day one, when my kids are very little, I've told all of them, Bridget, Rachel, Michael, David, Sarah, I'm not your friend. I don't want to be your friend. I'm your dad. And a dad has nobody else can do the job I've got to do. I've got very special duties and responsibilities as your father. You see, in this day and age, there's a lot of parents, if you're lucky enough to be in a 2-parent, intact household, chances are both mommy and daddy are working. And you don't have a lot of time with the kids. And I think moms intuitively want to be friends with their daughters more than guys want to be friends with their kids. But nobody wants to play the heavy. Nobody wants to be the bad guy. Because I've only got such little time with the child, you feel, you feel guilty, so you go easy. And you want to be their friend. Anybody can be your friend. Rollo and I have been talking about this friend thing for a while, and I'm going to give you 2 examples. Anybody can be my friend. My dog can be my friend. Dogs are man's best friend, right? Anybody can be your friend. But not anybody can be your dad. Not anybody can be your mom. And we see this in marriages, too. I was at a Catholic cathedral. I'm Catholic, as if that comes as a big surprise, right? 5 kids. I'm at a Catholic cathedral, it was before Easter, and the bishop was giving the sermon that day. The gospel was on the Transfiguration. And I'm seeing everything through my red pill eyes now, stuff that I didn't see before. And he's telling the crowd, that when Jesus went up with some of his apostles, he revealed his true self to the apostles. And that we, the people in the pews, need to reveal our true selves, our total selves, to some special friend. And then he goes, and if you're married, that's your spouse. I'm sitting in the back watching this, and I'm going, whoa, slow down there, Tiger. I'm not buying this, okay? And here's the reason why. I can be a friend with anybody. But in that marital relationship, I'm the husband. She's the wife. When you say friend, and I'm not saying you can't be a good friend with your wife or a best friend with your wife, okay? But first and foremost, your husband and wife. And that comes with, by just reducing it to a friendship, it degrades it. You see what I'm saying? It's the same with the parent-child. Dad's just my friend. It degrades it. And there's a saying, familiarity breeds contempt, okay? And I was talking with Rollo about the husband-wife thing and why you shouldn't tell all your darkest secrets or everything to your wife. You have a role as a husband and it's an intuitive, protective role to protect her. I don't want to burden my wife with financial things or things that are going on at work. She's got plenty to do at home with the kids. So you don't have to put everything out there. Also, with the reality of divorce in this day and age, the more the wife knows about you, okay, if things go bad, or as if Rollo likes to say, she goes feral, you can bet your bottom dollar every one of those dirty little secrets will come up in divorce court. We had I can't believe this story still. There was an elected official back in Oklahoma. I won't name him, okay? But he was one of these guys, he was like in two different worlds. He was a player, but he also wanted to be the, Jesus guy and a married kind of guy. And he had been convinced to write down or keep a journal of his sins. Which, let me tell you, anybody ever tells you that? No way. There's no way on God's little green earth you should ever write down, I don't care if you've got it in a Liberty safe, okay? Write down every little thing you've done wrong. Well, his marriage fell apart. And I'm there like, don't tell me. I said, where did you leave it? He left it under the bed. When they went to divorce court, that was entered into the court records. His pornography problems, all that stuff came out in court. So you have to be measured in what you share with other people, and that includes your spouse. Not just because it can be used against you, but like I said, you as a guy, as a patriarch in the family, you don't want to burden her with guy stuff, if that makes sense to you. Let me roll through a couple of these. I'm going to pour myself some water here, too. By the way, how many of you are familiar with Bishop T.D. Jakes? Raise your hands. You ever see the guy? You know who I'm talking about? Likes to sweat on TV. I can sweat more than him. So I may be putting on a show for you today. All right, let's get to what to look for in a wife, the vetting process. In fact, we just did Red Pill 101, episode 25 on vetting, especially for a long-term relationship, if you're looking for something like that. So her family, what are the dynamics? I've talked about the fact that I was never worried about meeting the dad. Dad's a pushover. I want to meet mom, and I want to meet mom as soon as possible if I'm seriously looking at somebody to marry down the road. The reason is she's going to tell me what the next 20 years of my life are going to look like. I want to know what the house is set up like. I want to know if dad's an alpha. If dad's an alpha, this is going to make her more attractive to me because she's coming from that kind of a situation. Is dad a beta? Is mom really in charge of the family? Is mom a nag? If mom's a nag, guess what? You're going to get your ass nagged. Is mom a clean freak? I'd like a clean freak, okay? Is the house messy? Is mom a hoarder? Those are all things that can come back to haunt you. A lot of people say take a look at the mother because that's what your wife's going to look like in 20 years. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But her behavior will be what you're looking at dealing with down the road. You want to know what the future wife's relationship was with her dad. Does she look up to her dad? Is her dad distant? What's her relationship like with her mother? All sorts of things you want to look for. And I think I hit number 2 there. A lot's made of the relationship with, more important is strong alpha. Okay, so mom's the one you need to take the hardest look at, not just physically. Okay, slob, I went through all those. The lie that your wife should be your best friend and know all your secrets. That's what I touched on there with that sermon from the bishop back in Tulsa. And it was funny because I like to sit in the back of the church to watch the reaction. And all of these couples looking at each other, the guys just like beat down, totally not each other. I'm there like shaking my head, You can be friends with your wife. She can be your best friend, but it's more than that. She's your wife. You're the husband. And with those, what's the line from Spider-Man? With great power comes great responsibility. And when you boil it down just to a friendship, it devalues the relationship. As I said before, anybody could be your friend. Anybody. I'm trying to think what other things I had on the wife that I wanted to bring up with you. Now, let me go on to the next slide here because I'll jump around a bit too. Oh, what does she bring to the relationship? How does she add value? Let me share something with you here. I got into a pretty interesting Twitter exchange earlier this week with a lady. I'm not going to mention her name per se, but Rollo talks a lot about sexual market value. And when he's on my program in Tulsa, women hear it, and here's what they hear. Women are only good for one thing, sex, and their physical appearance. And without those, once that starts to fade, what do you do? Do you take her to the glue factory? Do you trade her in? What do you do? Now, of course, that's not what Rollo's saying, but that's what they hear. One of the things that has frustrated me as a radio talk show host for years is I can control what I say. I've got a very elaborate vocabulary, but I can't control what people hear or think they hear. But that's what women, some women, not all, hear when Rollo's on the program, okay? So it's all about, women are sex objects. Men, when properly developed, are success objects. The girls aren't the prize, you're the prize. That's a complete reversal. That's a 180 on probably everything you've been taught along the way. And you become the prize by investing in yourself, whether it's education, starting a business, moving yourself up professionally in whatever profession you're in. You make yourself attractive. You're the prize, they're going to want you. And a lot of guys, when they're in maybe teenage years, even 20s, maybe late 20s, find that women, it's not easy to find women, date women, get women, if you want to use that language, right? But I was telling Rollo, somewhere along the age of, 28, I never really had a problem dating girls, but when I hit like 28, all of a sudden you got the pick of the litter. And the reason is the herd's thinning. That sexual market value is starting to decline. They're going into their epiphany phase. They know they've got to take action, and they've got to take action now. Somebody who wouldn't have looked at you at 22, all of a sudden now at 28, you're looking pretty good. So women, the sexual market value is so tied up in physical appearance and sexual performance. I'm here to tell you today, if you marry a woman, and I know guys that have, based either solely or primarily on physical appearance and sexual performance, I'm here to tell you that's got a limited shelf life. And depending on what age you marry her, it could be shorter, some can be a little bit longer. What's left after that? And guys, when we're out there dating, especially if you're sexually active with the girl, you're not thinking about that. You're all caught up in the moment. I told Rollo the other day, I started thinking, my parents' generation that waited to have sex before they got married. Nowadays, that seems crazy, right? But there was actually, other than the biblical reasoning behind it, there was something there that really does make sense. Because the minute, and every guy in here who has had sex with a woman, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The minute you become sexually involved with a woman, you no longer think like a rational male. You're now thinking emotionally. You're not thinking, you're feeling. Your cognitive abilities are now what a woman's are. You're feeling that you're in love with that woman. And when you're feeling, and I see this on Capitol Hill right now, you may have noticed we've got a number of new female legislators in Congress, and they're very dramatic when they want to push or promote legislation. In fact, they'll cry a lot. And I don't know that the crying is necessarily phony. Some of it may be real. But here's what women know. Women know that crying is a powerful tool. And crying impacts men more than women. Every guy in here, when you see a woman cry, intuitively you go, what's wrong? How can I help? And they know that by tugging at your heartstrings, which is what these legislators are doing, they're going to be able to get through whatever legislation they want to. When you start to legislate or make decisions based on feelings, it never ends in a good place, ever. And you have to realize when you're doing that, you're thinking like a woman. You're not thinking like a guy. I'm not telling you to abstain. I'm giving you the reality of what happens. Rollo's dad, who was divorced from his mother, had a great line Rollo shared on the program the other day. Rollo had asked his father before he passed away, why'd you marry Mom? He said it seemed like a good thing to do at the time. I had a guy call into my program last week. He's been married for 30 years. He's got 3 kids. He said, this is not what I signed up for. Because guys, when you get married, we don't think long term. You're getting married for life. You can't get car payments for life. You don't enter into a mortgage for life, but you're getting married for life. And we don't think life. We think about instant gratification because we live in a very hedonistic society. All of us, myself included. I want mine and I want it now. And they don't think about what it's going to look like 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. What's left? So back to this tweet I put out, and I asked the lady, I said, serious question. I said, not to be a smartass. I said, aside from the sex, what is it that you bring or offer that adds value? I said, every woman should answer that question for themselves. I said, the answers may surprise you. And I really didn't expect her to respond. In fact, I expected her to block me, right? But she actually gave a really good response. She said the whole package: support, adoration. I don't need adoration. Respect, that I need. Loyalty. I'm a big fan of Donald Trump's. I don't apologize for that. I voted for Donald Trump. The thing I dig the most about Donald Trump, he's like a mob boss. Loyalty is the most important thing. You're loyal to Donald Trump, he'll buy you the moon. You betray him, he will slit your throat. And you know what I'm talking about. That's the way Trump operates. He's like the Gambino crime boss or something, right? But loyalty in a marriage. And I'm not just talking about fidelity. Loyalty to the husband. That is sacrosanct. That's sacred. It's critical. You have to have that. Back to the list she put together here. Loyalty, cleaning, cooking. Now, you put those out there nowadays, oh, they want to go back to the 1950s. No. Affection. Massages. Don't fall for the massages. I fell for that, and I think maybe after 4 times with my wife trying to rub my traps, she said they're hard as rock. That was it. We were done with that. Consideration, great sex. Can I get that in writing and notarized, please? Love, touch, attention, excitement. Here you go. This one's a little different. Financial contribution. That's interesting. Creativity, joy, family, consistency, inspiration, beauty, fun. And then she goes on with one more here. An organizer, a confidant. And again, we'll get back to, you have to be careful what you tell your wife. There's some things she doesn't need to know. You don't need to unnecessarily worry her. And you also have to think in the back of your head, because everybody says, well, that'll never happen to me. How many guys do you know who have been zeroed out, betrayed? Right? You have to be careful what you tell people. I had a friend of mine who was involved in real estate down in Florida. Well, I'm in Florida. In fact, he was in the Orlando area. And he was very successful, and right around the time the market crashed, he looked like what we would call a trad-con family. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. They had 4 kids. They homeschooled them. Everything was beautiful until the market crashed. And my friend, who I won't identify, obviously, I guess in a moment of weakness, was crying and confided in his wife that he had been molested by a priest when he was 14. I'm there like, dude, why did you tell her that? Seriously, why would you possibly tell her that? Even if that's true, why would you give that away? Well, she's already, and Rollo says it, and it's true. And don't fool yourself. Every woman has a B plan. This chick had a B plan. And this was her gateway right here. When she saw him as not competent, he's not the breadwinner, he's weak, he was molested by a priest. Gee, I wonder if he's been molesting our kids. This whole thing came unglued and got so ugly you wouldn't believe it. And somehow she got an annulment from the church, and she's onto her B plan. And he's a broken man. I'm surprised he didn't pull an Anthony Bourdain. But it's because he confided something he should not have confided in his wife. I said, what did you possibly think you were going to get out of that? Well, that's right, you don't know. Well, you saw what you got out of it. Back to this, confident, a great listener. A great listener. That's like the number one criticism guys get. You don't listen. You don't listen to me. But this lady's promising to be a great listener. Here's some, someone who boosts your ego. I guess some guys need that, I don't. I am very leery of false praise. You know, when somebody compliments you, it's like, okay, what do you want? Kind of a deal. So that's, maybe some people need that, I don't. Let's see, boosts your ego and makes you a better version of yourself. Who supports your goals, that's important. How many guys have I talked to, 40, 50, 60 years old, always wanted to do something, but she wouldn't let me. She wouldn't let me. Well, guess who's in charge of that household? What else do you see? It makes you become even better. The list goes on and on. Okay, so actually this thing here, this sounds too good to be true. In fact, a couple of people commented, you sold me. Where do I go? Where do I get my unicorn? I want my unicorn now. But those are qualities that you should be looking for in a woman. And a lot of those qualities there, women are taught nowadays, you don't do that. You don't bow to a man. I did a program with Rolo on Friday, my local program. And a quick story here. It had to do with, well, I won't use her name. It had to do with the superintendent of the public school district where I live, okay? She's 52, 53 years old. Somebody found a picture of her at a party in an outfit that I wouldn't let my 21-year-old daughter walk out of the house with, okay? It's like either you're going to, because the boots in particular she had on, I wish I could show you the picture. It's like Gene Simmons called, he wants his shoes back, from Kiss. And the outfit, she was crouched down, the boobs were just hanging out. And a couple of parents, women mind you, put it up on a Facebook page, and we're taking issue with it. Is this the way the leader of the school district should look? Or is this the message we want to send to kids? Okay? That lasted maybe about 8 comments. Then all of a sudden, her girlfriends jumped in. And it was a cat fight like you've never seen. You're just jealous. You're fat. You're just jealous. She's got the figure. You go, girl. You go, girl. And no woman should ever dress for a man. And they accused anybody that took issue with the way she was dressed, you're automatically slut-shaming. And I'm there like, wait a minute. You can't slut-shame unless the person is a slut or looks like a slut, right? But that's what they were accused of, slut-shaming. And we did a whole program this week on my local show with Rolo about how a woman dresses. And, we've all heard the joke, honey, does this make me look fat? No, that doesn't make you look fat. The ass makes you look fat, But, of course, yeah, all right. But we got into a bigger issue about whether or not a husband should tell a woman, his wife, what to wear. I've got no problem doing it with my daughters. Before my daughters go out, it's like, let me see what you got on. If it doesn't pass muster, you go back upstairs or you don't go out. But when it comes to the wife, nowadays, it's like the feminine imperative has taught people that you should never submit to a man. A man should never dictate what you wear, how you look. Now, if you find the right one, and I'm not going one-itis on you, but if the ideal woman is going to want to dress to please you. The ideal woman is going to want to dress to compliment you, to make you look good. I got a buddy of mine, his wife is a pediatrician at a hospital, and they went to a gala fundraiser. She had a ball gown on. Now he would like to go in his cargo pants or cargo shorts and his flip-flops and a baseball cap, but that would make her look bad. So of course he dressed up in a tuxedo, right? But you reverse that and you try to say that to women, and all of a sudden, well, you're a misogynist. You just don't like women. You're a control freak. You want to control women. But the ideal woman, if you're finding her or looking for her, is going to be somebody who wants to dress to please you. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean modestly. Sometimes I know guys, they got a smoking hot wife. They want her to look hot when they go out. They're showing her off. But the woman is dressing to please him, not the other way around. Okay, so how does she add value? We did the predominantly looks. I'm just telling you, so many guys. She looked great. The sex was fantastic. The minute you put the ring on, you say, I do, all of that slowly dissipates because you've now lost control of the frame. You've lost control of the narrative. She is now in control. Rollo's guidelines for men getting married. And I've conveyed this to my two sons. My son, Michael, 21's in the Marine Corps, just got back from tour duty in Syria. My other son, David's 20. He's in college. I totally agree with this. Guys, you should not even think about getting married until you're at least 30. Why? You're not ready. Why? You're still in the embryonic stage. You're not fully developed. Why? You don't have enough life experience. Well, what am I supposed to do between 20 and 30? Work on yourself. Get that life experience. You have to have had multiple relationships, and I'm not saying to bed everybody, okay? But if you've only ever been with one woman, you don't know what else is out there. You have nothing to compare her to. You need to have had a variety of experiences so that you know what's going to be right for you and your situation down the road. That's solid advice. Not getting married before the age of 30. He goes up to 35. Ideally, you want the woman to be 5 to 7 years younger than you. And I'm going to go even further. I'm going to say 10. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But 5 to 7, that's exactly what I did, by the way. This is before the rational male. I got married at 30. My wife falls in that 5 to 7 year range. It worked out well for us. She's somebody that looks up to me. This idea of equality or an egalitarian relationship. An equal, if you're equal, you're eye to eye. You're eye to eye. You cannot look up to the man if you're equal, okay? Or if you're superior, you're looking down on the guy. Marriage, Rollo says all the time, is complementary. We're better together than we are apart. The 10-year thing here, I'm going to put this in, and I'll tell you why. Especially when you get to be about my age, okay? You're going to notice that a guy, if you take care of yourself, if you're in good shape, you exercise regularly, you don't have diabetes, you don't smoke, all those things, you're not overweight, okay? And especially if you're on hormone replacement therapy, TRT, okay? You're going to be sexually healthy like a 28-year-old used to be. Not like a 28-year-old is nowadays, but a 28-year-old used to be. So, I mean, there's guys, Anthony Quinn got his wife pregnant when he was 82. He's still knocking it out of the park, okay? Women, there's a biological clock. When menopause, and it can come early for some women, it can come later for others. But right around that 45, maybe to 53 window is when things start slowing down. She's not going to have the interest. In fact, I was watching, some British lady. She's like their version of Joyce Myers. She was talking to, this was on like a TED Talk or a YouTube video. She was talking to women about how to get that desire back. And she seemed to be talking to a crowd that was around that 40 to 50 age. And she said, it's the funniest thing too, because I busted up with my wife. She goes, ladies, you need to get that canoe back in the water and just start paddling. And I got a charge out of that. But the hormone replacement therapy, let me talk a little bit about that, because it's something I know about. A lot of guys go out and get on TRT, and they do it by themselves. That is a prescription for disaster. If you're going to, if you're married, and you're going to look into hormone replacement therapy, it needs to be a joint effort for both the husband and the wife. Because otherwise, those ships are going in different directions and they're never going to pass. And I've seen guys that go on TRT and their wives are going into menopause, and it's like they wind up getting divorced. And it's because their bodies are just moving in very different directions. Don't listen to what she says, but rather watch what she does. Okay, this is one of my, if you've been to my Twitter page, or my Twitter account on the top, I've got, and it's at twitter.com/PC1170. This is a universal truth. Universal truth. Don't listen to what people say. Watch what they do. Why? Because their actions always betray them. That applies to you, it applies to me, it applies to women. Don't listen to what people say, watch what they do. Their actions always betray them. I love you. Well, what do your actions say? Watch, don't listen to what she says to you. And especially during the dating process, if you haven't signed the dotted line, that's the time to do all of this discerning. And this is the kind of discerning that comes with age. This is the kind of discerning that comes with experience. Don't listen to what she says, but rather watch what she does. Her actions will always give her away. Always, without fail. I'm looking at my clock down there. Got to jump around a couple things here. Hold on. Oops. Oops, wrong one. I'm having a little trouble with this. Should be going on to the next one. George, anybody? Anybody? Maybe I did something. This won't bring to the relationship. Can we flip it to the next screen, please? I wonder if I paused it or what. Yeah, perfect. Okay, what is my mission, my goal, my objective as the father, the dad, okay? I get this from, I used to get this from my kids until I explained what it was about, right? A lot of people, they see me, I'm strong, I'm overbearing, perhaps. I'm a control freak, perhaps. But they think that you want to control their lives. I don't want to control anybody's life. I don't want to control my wife's life. I don't want to control my kid's life, okay? But sometimes it feels like that from their perspective. Here's what I do have to. I have a duty. If you're patriarchs here, you have a duty. I'm going to say it, a God-given duty. You have a duty to set boundaries for your children. They intuitively thirst for that. They may, no, I want to do it because their friends are doing it. Like my daughter. My daughter had a dress that she wanted to wear to homecoming. And I took a look at it. I'm going, baby, that's not happening. We're taking that back to the store. But this is what everybody else wears. Everybody else is not my daughter. I don't care about anybody else's kids. The only kids I care about are mine. And you are up against a society that is just pushing it. I think it was Hunter, maybe a week or two ago, was talking about cell phones and, computers for kids. Kids, I see kids 5, 6 years old with cell phones, 10 years old with cell phones. They need a cell phone. What the hell do you need an iPhone for at 10 years old? Seriously. Well, so I can call mom. And I'm talking with full access to the internet. Everybody in here knows what that means, what that entails. And then they'll tell you all their friends do it. I don't care about your friends. You're my responsibility. You're my duty. And there's a reason for this, too. The long-term reason is teaching them self-control. If you as a parent do your job right, once they get out of your house, okay, this is like my end objective. If I do my job right, when my kid's out of the house, when my daughters, my sons are out of the house, I want them to make good decisions. I want them to make the right decisions. Not because daddy told them to or daddy made them to, but because I taught them how to make those decisions. If that happens, and I'm not necessarily going to agree with every decision they make, okay? That's not the point. But if I'm able to do that, it's mission accomplished. That's really the role of the mother and the father, but the dad in particular. The dad has a headship role, a leadership role. And it's not popular, it's not politically correct nowadays to say it, but I don't care. Disciplining children. How, when, where, and why. I think it was Hunter. There was something that was up either on one of the Patriarch podcasts or some Twitter discussion. Corporal punishment, spanking, okay? I look like a guy that might be a spanker, right? Pretty intimidating. I've never hit my kids. Never. The only possible exception is when one of the girls was little and ran out in the street, I smacked her on the butt. That was it. I'm of the belief that if I've got to get physical with my children, I got a problem. I got a problem. And a lot of times when I see people getting physical, it's because they waited too long to get involved with the child. Or they do it out of frustration, or they do it because they don't have the tools. They don't have the coping tools. Now, when I was growing up, I did get spanked. Not a lot. I got the belt from my father, but for every time that I got it, I deserved it. I deserved it. And I'm the kind of guy, that was the only way I was going to learn. But I've never struck or hit any of my kids in anger. And I don't think it's a good thing for dads to do. Because I've dealt with a lot of people over the years, and I've seen the scars, the hurt. And it does send a message, and this is where, the feminists will pick up on us, and they'll talk about toxic masculinity. There they go, beating their kids, right? I'm not going to give them the ammunition to use against me. I got all sorts of tricks when it comes to getting my kids on board. I'm pretty clever. Here's another thing, too. Disciplining children. How, when, where, and why. Anytime I have had a problem with any of my children and or my wife, I handle that privately. With the kids, I bring them back to my office. I talk with them one-on-one. There's a reason for that. I grew up in a very big house. I'm the oldest of 13. And I saw what happened when other children got disciplined in front of the other kids. And I didn't want that to happen with my kids. So when I discipline a child, no matter how big, how small, okay, I bring them back to my office. I talk to them. We hopefully rectify the situation. It's between him and me or her and me. Sometimes I don't even share it with mom. And it certainly doesn't get shared with the other brothers or sisters. Well, what happened to Michael? None of your business. What happened to Bridget? None of your business. This idea that everybody has to know everything going on in the household is nonsense, especially when it comes to discipline. Discipline is something I'm very careful about. Now, I mentioned I grew up in a really large house. I never saw my mom and dad fight. Ever. Not even argue. I'm sure they did, but I don't know when. But that also put me at a disadvantage because I didn't learn how to do it right. Stop and think about that for a minute. So parents can have disagreements, not big ones in front of the kids, but you can have disagreements and show you're actually mentoring your children, showing them how to peacefully resolve issues without slamming doors and stomping out of the house. Okay, from a very early age, stress the importance of trust and loyalty. Those are two of my biggest things, trust and loyalty. And let the child know why they're so critical. Even when they're little, I remember my son Michael telling him when he was like 5 years old, Mike, I have to be able to trust you. Always tell me the truth. Always tell me the truth. I have to be able to trust you because someday you might need me to go to bat for you. And I said, I got to know you're telling me the truth. Now here's the problem. The guy like me, and you might think I'm big and scary now, I used to be bigger and scarier, okay? And that can backfire. As I look back in retrospect, is it better to be feared or respected? Like from Iron Man, right? Is it too much to ask for both? Tony Stark, right? I don't want to be feared by my children. I want to be respected by my children. And you earn their respect by the way you behave as the father. But if you're too scary, like me, a kid is almost automatically going to lie because they don't want to incur your wrath. In fact, there's a guy, Brian Tracy, who's written a number of books. He's sort of a goal guy. But he had some sort of a deal with his kids where I will never hurt you physically or punish you if you tell me the truth. If you lie to me, I will. But that's something, and again, with all this talk nowadays about toxic masculinity, that's something that really needs to be stressed, the trust and the loyalty. Oh, the peer group. Got to get into this. And this is where mommy comes in. Mommy comes in. Oldest of 13. I got two brothers. One I refer to as the black sheep. Both brothers went off the rail, and it had to do with their peer groups in those critical teen years. 13, 14, 15, 16. I almost went down the same path they did, but by some sort of divine intervention, the group I was hanging around with at the time all of a sudden vanished. And I was out there by myself, and I had to reinvent myself at about 15, 16 years old. And at that time, I found Rocky, the movie, and I got into boxing, and I loved that. I loved that. But the peer group that your kids are around, and this is where mom comes in. And this is why mom plays such a critical role in the house, too, and you do, too. You need to know who your children's friends are, especially girls, but boys, too. You need to know who they're hanging around with, because that group, especially during the teenage years, is going to have so much influence over the course of your child's life. It's critical that you be involved. That you can't be AWOL there. But that's an area in particular where moms seem to have a much better understanding of what's going on with their kids, especially the girls, who they're hanging around with, who their friends are. Moms will talk with other moms. So that's a big one to concentrate on as well. How much time do I have here? I've got about 5. I want to get into the story of Michael here, my son. All right. What's my goal as dad, okay? Give them the tools, give them the foundation, give them the formula for success. So I talk about my son Michael here, who's in the Marine Corps. And when Mike was Mike was a little bit of a runt growing up. He wanted to play football, those kind of things. And when he was around 14, 15, he wanted to start going to the gym with me, okay? So I had some success as a power lifter in the 242-pound class. My best ever lifts were, let's see, the one meet I won in 95, I did a 725 squat, 470 bench, and a 725 deadlift. That should come out to 1920. I never got the 2,000 limit I wanted, but I learned a lot from powerlifting that I was able to apply to life. So I got Mike into lifting, and it wasn't because I wanted him to win trophies, although I did want him to experience the feeling of being a winner. But more importantly, I took him from, I think, 160 pounds when he was 14, 15, up to 220 when he was a senior. And then that summer he was a senior, we had to get him back down to 175 to go into Marine Corps boot camp. Because at 220, that ain't gonna work, right? And he found out I could do a lot more chin-ups at 175. But what I did with him is I put a plan down. I put an eating plan down for him. I put a training plan down with him. And we spent time together, so we bonded as father and son. You need to find an activity as dad. You need to find an activity that you can use with every child in your family. Now, powerlifting isn't going to be it for everybody. Some of my daughters wanted to go lift. I brought them to lift with me. My one son David, he's not into that. He went a couple times. He liked it, but not like Michael liked it. So I had to find something else to do with him. You as a dad, you have a duty, a responsibility to find something you can bond with your children on. Maybe it's going to movies. I don't know what it's going to be. You know your kids better than I do, but you have a duty, a responsibility to do that. But the reason I taught him that was that he understood that if you have a plan and you have a way to measure things, okay, you will be successful. I wanted him to learn the lesson I learned from powerlifting, because I went out and I got myself a coach when I wanted to go up to the next level. And he's been able to convey that into other parts of his life. Another thing, funny, I just had a conversation with him the other day, and he was telling me about one of his buddies that got his girlfriend knocked up. And he says, I find myself giving more and more of your advice. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, I told him, he says, somebody else has gone through what you're going through right now and has written a book about it. He says, all you need to do is find that book. And I told him, I said, but Mike, I said, you better make sure he finds the right book, okay? But he gets it, and there's a great deal of truth to that. So the ultimate objective, I guess as I wrap things up here, this is how you're gonna, when you're 75, you're sitting in your rocking chair, okay? On that porch, looking back on your life. Ultimate objective, I want my children to make good decisions, the right decisions, on their own without me telling them or forcing them. If I've done that as a dad, it's mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. I hope this has been of some help. Thank you.
What he represents is patriarchy. We're here to do work as men, as patriarchs. There's nothing more natural than being a father. Well, it's George Bruno with the 21 Report in Orlando, Florida. And it's my pleasure to be talking with Mr. Pat Campbell from 1170 AM in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we're going to talk to him about his message to men here. But first, I want to find out, what's your experience with the 21 convention so far?
It's been a real eye-opener. I like pretty much everything I've heard so far. Fascinating meeting some of the people, hearing their stories. They come from a very diverse, I guess, background. You got people traveling from other parts of the world to come here just to see some of the speakers. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. What about the content? When you looked at the lineup and the content of the conference, is there anything that kind of jumped out at you, or did you think there was more of something or less of something? What do you think?
No, it's pretty much what I've been expecting, but part of it is because I've been part of the Red Pill podcast. I've had Rollo on. I've had a lot of these people on my program already. Jack Murphy. We've had Rich Cooper. I've had Rollo on, and there's somebody else that I'm missing right now. But most of these people I've been following on Twitter and or visiting their blogs for more than a year. So
that's fantastic. Yeah,
I was really honored to be invited. Caught completely off guard. I had a conversation with Anthony off air, and he was talking to me about how he didn't have somebody like me growing up, and there aren't a lot of people like me anymore. And asked me if I wanted to come speak, and I said, sure, let's do it.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing that doesn't exist? There are people that say there's people like you that don't exist, or they didn't exist while they were growing up.
Right, yeah.
And you're having an effect on people and not even knowing it.
Right. That always blows me away. That's an experience I had teaching too. I taught for a number of years. I used to be a math teacher. It was weird. Like sometimes 10, 15 years later, you'd have a kid come back and mention something that you said that had a profound impact on him or her. And it's like, wow, it's and radio's that way too.
Yeah. Radio's
that way as well. So one guy came up to me here and he goes, wow, he says, Pat Campbell, he says, I can't believe you're here for real. Dude, I'm just a guy on the radio, man. Just a guy on the radio. But he's been following me with Rollo, and I think he's seen me on a couple of the Red Pill podcasts. But he digs what we're doing. But a number of guys have come here, traveled quite a distance to be part of this.
Yeah. It seems like your message is consistent with everything here. Sometimes Red Pill and Manosphere broadcasts are sometimes confused with like a how to get laid conference or how to pick up chicks conference, and it's so different than that.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that?
Absolutely. And the other thing is, and I've been talking about this with Rollo over the last year, the Red Pill has become very popular, and you've got a lot of people that aren't really Red Pill that are trying to tap in to this magic.
Yeah.
And that has to be weeded out. In fact, I told Rollo, I said, you've got to protect your brand, because people are hijacking it. They're making it say, they're turning it into something that it isn't.
I got red-pilled politically. I got red-pilled physically. It's like, oh, please, come on.
Yeah. And there's people that are trying to leech on to the movement too for their own, I guess, financial reasons. And it's been interesting to just watch it evolve over the last year.
How do you think that you contribute to the movement and to the Red Pill community and men in general?
My mission, and I explained this to Rollo early on, I got the audiobooks, right? And I started listening to them. Obviously, some of the language he uses on the audiobooks cannot be used in terrestrial radio because the FCC will be crawling up my back end with some fines. I think he had a very important message to give, but he was giving it to a very limited audience. And I think the message is relevant, and there's a greater audience out there for him. I explained to him that my mission is to bring him to terrestrial radio. not only in my market where I am, but a lot of times I'll sit in for other people. Like I sat in for Todd Schnitt, who used to be big in Tampa, but he's got a syndicated talk show. He's on in 65 markets, right? I brought Rollo on the program. That's 65 markets that never heard Rollo before.
Yeah.
So that's my job, to bring him out there. And again, to give parents tools, because parents, you know, people that have kids out there, especially boys, but even girls, they're confused. You know, nothing makes sense anymore. Everything's backwards. Dating isn't dating. Dating means you're having sex. People are having kids before they get married. Everything's backwards. You've got many fatherless homes or absentee dads, and you know, people are looking for answers. I've been surprised on my program is the number of women have actually purchased his books for their kids, for their boys.
Yeah.
Because they're looking for answers.
Well, the first time that I heard that guys are bringing their women and their wives here, I thought, oh my God, everyone's going to be offended. And there's so much support from females. The ones that are offended by it, well, they do have a certain look, I will say that.
I'm not touching that one.
Yeah,
exactly. Here's the deal. In talk radio land, attacking a woman on her physical appearance never ends well.
It never
never
ends
well.
well.
The only person I've ever seen get away with it has been Donald Trump, and I'm not Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go for the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, right. How does your message resonate in your region? Now, obviously, there is a internet reach with the radio station that you are at, but geographically, how is your message received by the geographical listening audience?
Right. So Tulsa, Oklahoma, is known as the buckle of the Bible Belt. There's a number of mega churches there, Oral Roberts University, a very strong evangelical presence, a very strong Baptist presence. As I mentioned, I've encountered some resistance because, like Rollo talked about his notch count, you know. Well, you got a guy on there bragging about how many women he's bagged, you know. That was a long time ago, right? And by the way, even if he was doing it today, I'm not bringing him on to talk about his notch count. I'm bringing him on because he's got compelling content, exclusive content in his books that makes sense out of how men and women interact in society. I'm not bringing him on as a pillar of virtue. I'm not bringing him on as a religious leader. I'm bringing him on as a secular guy to share his knowledge with us and talk about stories that are in the news.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, guess what? Change the dial.
Change the dial.
Right?
Exactly.
But he has been very well received, and especially the surprise for me was by women listeners who almost always agree with him, okay? Except when he says things like, you know, for every 3 times she says she loves you, you only give her 2 back. That didn't go over well.
Right.
And when he went off on tattoos, we were talking about Tess Holliday, the plus-size model, okay? And he had done a Red Pill episode about are women with tattoos always damaged material, right? Well, you look at Tess Holliday. Tess Holliday is an extreme example, okay? She's got full sleeves, whatever you call it, when you got the full legs too. But the people that I work with, women in particular, what they heard, this is one of the great things that frustrates me as a talk show host, okay? 25 years in November. I can control what I say. I've got a very elaborate vocabulary, but I cannot control what people hear or sometimes think they hear. So when Rollo was talking about tattoos, what the women at work heard was, if you've got a tattoo, you're a whore. It's not what he said, but that's the message they picked up.
Yeah.
Because that's what they heard or thought they heard.
Right.
And he also talked about the fact that he sent studies, we posted them on Twitter, scientific studies, where the more tattoos you have, the more promiscuous you are, okay? And that applies to men and women. But men, nobody heard the men part, okay? It applies to men and women equally. And he also got into a discussion about the tattoo does not become, because the traditional one is the tramp stamp, right? That somehow makes you loose. He says, no. He says, that's not the way it works. He says, if you are, then you're going to get one of those. But, and again, here's where you run into some problems. Not everyone that gets one of those is a tramp or even loose. A lot of people, especially with like my daughter's generation, people are getting tattoos because it's trendy. It's the stylish thing to do. You know, people wore bell bottoms at one time. Yeah. Not because it was the right thing to do or the good thing. It was stylish.
Yeah, and you can throw them away.
Yeah, with the ink, that's a whole different story though. Yeah.
I had heard that tattoo removal is a faster growing industry than the tattoo industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of blows my mind.
I sat around one of my daughter's softball games, and by far, women had more tats than guys. Seeing a woman at the game that didn't have ink, that was I counted two that were in the fan stands.
Yeah.
At the game. It's been a trendy thing to do, and it used to be years ago. The only people that got tattoos were guys, and they fell into a couple of categories. They were either bikers, military, or convicts.
Yeah.
And it was usually a sign that you were a badass.
Yeah.
Okay. And women have, as Rollo talks about, they're sort of, playing out their badass with tattoos. Of course, tattoos, this is another thing that caused some issues on the radio, that women use them to mark like milestones, the birth of their first child, a divorce, any number of things. But guys do that too.
Yeah.
When guys go, like my son's in the Marine Corps, well, of course you get a tattoo. I mean, you're in the Marine Corps, right? Of
course.
It's a rite of passage kind of thing. But they mark things too. And again, what some people heard was that, only women get tattoos to mark milestones. It's both ways. But that's the only area where women got a little ticked off with him. But by and far, they like what he's saying. Here's the only objection is he's right, but he doesn't have to tell everybody.
Yeah.
Don't let it out. Shh.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as one of my favorite founding fathers, John Adams, says, facts are stubborn things.
That's true. That's true.
How do you find that your message is received amongst the ages? Who is more receptive to your message and your data, your material, your style? Is it older, younger? Does it span all the age groups?
It's weird because my core demo is supposed to be a 47-year-old male, okay? I find the most resistance to, especially with what I do with Rollo, from older listeners, male listeners. And I probably shouldn't say this on here, but sometimes I listen to people and they're like, you need to get laid. That's your whole problem. You've just turned into an absolute bitch. You need to get laid.
Yeah.
And of course I can't say that on the radio.
Yeah.
I've wanted to a couple of times.
Yeah.
But they're frustrated because it's like that 65-year-old guy I talked about at the start of the talk. In the twilight, he's looking back. He's done everything the way he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And he's been in a sexless, really loveless marriage. What do you get? Congratulations, here's your participation trophy.
Right.
Who is the greater commitment to? Of course, he's I don't want to say he's too old because you can even go back and change at that age.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's sort of the deal. That's where I get the resistance from. It's the older. And actually bringing Rollo on, I've attracted a whole new, younger demographic to the program. Guys that totally, I had one guy, he says, I only listen to Rollo. Okay, so the other 19 hours I do a week doesn't matter. It's just that I bring Rollo on. But whatever
they
works for you,
tune in.
man.
Yeah. Do you find, being in the Bible Belt, do you find that there's a lot of Christian and biblical and evangelical resistance with Wild at Heart, Promise Keepers, these types of things, which I consider to be like, it's almost like if I see a woman who is like excited about her man going to the Wild at Heart conference, it would be like taking your dog to obedience training. I look at that stuff as like beta training, obedience training. It's.
I'm going to steal that. That'll be on the radio.
Yeah, I'm finding that it makes a more compliant.
This is what I talked about with Rollo. After reading the book, I'm convinced I was a tradcon. I was, past tense, a tradcon.
Yeah.
I'm the bouncer.
Yeah.
I'm the enforcer.
Yeah.
If one of my friends gets divorced, I'm supposed to shame the guy.
Yeah.
I don't know jack squat about what happened.
Right.
But as long as we got the woman's story, that's good enough. I should go off on this guy and shame him, right?
Right.
And I refuse to play that role anymore.
Yeah.
But that's what it is because, and Rollo's coming out with that fourth book, which is the linchpin on religion. He even invited me to write the foreword to it.
That's the enforcement mechanism for the feminine imperative. You know, they say, well, the churches are run by men. Well, I don't know if you've been to a church lately. I'm Catholic, okay? And although it looks like a male-dominated church from the outside, you know, very, very patriarchal, because no female priests, anything like that, or ministers. Well, I shouldn't say ministers, because they're Eucharistic ministers. The reality is this is the exact opposite. The feminine imperative has infested every mainstream Christian denomination in the world, including Catholicism. We've got all sorts of problems going on in the church right now, and what you've got is a very effeminate priesthood.
Yeah.
Where if you go into the churches and see who's actually running the show, it's the women.
Yeah.
You know, as Eucharistic ministers, as lectors, as cantors, you name it.
Yeah.
They're running the show. It looks like a guy's doing it.
Yeah.
No. And then you look at some of the changes in the liturgy, the wording, everything. It's like a Trojan horse inside every church out there.
I spent years going to men's breakfasts, retreats, all kinds of men's Bible studies, that type of thing. And a lot of guys think it's real manly to go off in the woods and you stay at a lodge. It's got to be like a log cabin kind of lodge, and you got to wear a flannel shirt and, you know, jeans and boots and whatever. And they do things like rope cattle or, you know, whatever, and have bonfires where they write their stuff and crumple it up and bring it to the bonfire like they're leaving something behind and start getting a fresh start. And I found that just, you know, and then the testimonies when they return. I went on this retreat and this happened. I'm going to come back and be the man God wants me to be. Let me ask you this. What the heck, how do you define the man that God wants you to be?
That's a great question. Here's the problem. In fact, I was talking with Rich Cooper about this earlier. There's, right now in the United States, there's 39,000 different Christian churches.
Yeah.
All claiming to be Christian. In fact, I joke, I said, if Jesus were to come back today, where would he go first? Pull out the yellow pages, sort of a dated joke.
Yeah.
First Church of Christ, we'll stop there.
Yeah, right, right.
But they all claim to be Christian.
Yeah.
They're all teaching things that are similar, but they also have, you know, differences between them. So I don't know how the church defines a man anymore. What a man is supposed to do, what he's supposed to be from a biblical perspective, because it varies from church to church.
Yeah.
And depending on how much feminine imperative infiltration there is in a church, it's going to vary in degrees.
Do you think masculinity is on a continuum? Do you think, like, for instance, there are guys that are just slighter in build. There are men who just don't have a good handshake.
Right.
There's men who just don't have, and I know you can lift weights. I know Ryan said, someone said, what should I do about confidence? Lift weights, you know. Like a lot of people say, get laid, lift weights, can solve, you know, 90% of a man's problems. But on that continuum, there are men who are at the lower end, and I don't want to say feminine end because that's insulting them.
Right.
There are guys here, nerds, who are all day at a computer. They don't go to the gym, and then you got Navy SEAL looking dudes here.
Right.
Wide variety. And then these guys here, I can tell that they want to be like this guy here.
Right.
And they're just never going to be that. It's not going to happen. I mean, there are the Joe Weider, got sand kicked in my face kind of guys that are going to turn their lives around and all that stuff like that. Speak to the guy who isn't the most overtly masculine kind of guy. And there he is right there, actually. That's the guy you have to talk to.
The cameraman.
The cameraman. What would you tell that guy about his worries and concerns about masculinity now?
There's too much emphasis on physical appearance. You know, I talked the talk I gave earlier with women. If it's just physical appearance, you need the 10. Okay, great in bed. Okay, it's got a limited shelf life. Wake up, it's got a limited shelf life. When that's gone, and it will go someday, what do you got left? Okay?
Yeah.
With guys, there's a great emphasis on physical appearance. But even if you're not, you know, born good looking, if you're not in great shape, there's still a lot of other areas you can develop. You can still become very, very successful. Again, women are seen as sex objects, guys as success objects. Boy, it's amazing what a big bank account can do to overcompensate.
Money is sexy.
It is. It's very sexy.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of things guys can do. You're not gonna be me. They're not gonna be you. But there's things that they can do to build on your strengths. Build on your strengths for starters. You know.
Is intelligence sexy and masculine?
Highly. In fact, I've attracted some very beautiful women on an intellectual level.
Yeah.
That this is so true. If you can connect with a woman intellectually, okay, you make that connection. Anything you want. Anything you want. They say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. A way to a woman is through her head.
Interesting.
Through her head. Most guys don't get that. They
And
don't
you have
understand
the advantage. Now, you're an imposing figure. When you're in a room, people know it. But you're on talk radio and not on television. Is there a video broadcast or is it all audio?
Well, that's funny because people used to, they had an impression of what they thought I looked like before I was visible.
That's what I was going to ask you.
And I would people would go, you're not like what I thought you were going to look like. You know, and I said, what did you say? They want it's more like Rush Limbaugh. Well, I said, you know, at the time I still had a full head of hair. I said, well, because they're looking for fat and bald. I said, I'm not fat. I said, but I'm working on the bald. They got the bald down. I don't want the fat. But it is funny because I remember in one market I was working at the time back in Ohio, there was a guy, former Green Beret, and he just hated me, man. And he was going to come down to the radio station and kick my ass, right? I said, I'm out front at noon. This radio station was downtown. People were looking out the windows in the office buildings. I said, bring it. He drove by and left. He called in the next day. He says, I was there. He says, I didn't realize you looked like the way you did. And at the time, I was 255. And he's there like, then we became buddies after that. But they have a weird impression because they just hear you, what they think you look like. Mark Levin, you know the radio talk show host? When I hear him, I see Danny DeVito. Or no, Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci. That's the voice. It sounds like Joe Pesci. It doesn't sound. It's like, well, wait a minute. When I saw him, I was like, oh, that was weird. I've only known like 2 guys in talk radio ever that looked the way I thought they were going to look. There was a guy, Mark Guy Finley, back in Erie, Pennsylvania, sort of a mentor to me. I thought he'd look like Waylon Jennings. He looks exactly like Waylon Jennings. But
you know, like I guess Fox News has been around for about 20 years or so, a little more than that, I believe.
I think 96 they went on there.
And they are the only news network that has brought on talk radio guys. So I'm seeing Mark Stein, I'm seeing Joe Pags, I'm seeing, you know, I'm seeing the names. And for the first time in history, we're seeing the men that are behind these voices.
When I lived in Orlando, I did a lot of work with Fox. O'Reilly brought me on over 20 times. There was a girl that was abducted down here, Jessica Lunsford, and he needed a point man down here to keep him up on stuff. And another friend of mine, Mike Gallagher, who's a radio talk show host, put him in touch with me.
Mike well.
And that parlayed itself into multiple appearances on Fox and Friends, and also on MSNBC. Tucker Carlson used to be over there. He'd bring me on every Friday, put me up against people like Rachel Maddow. In the last couple of years, though, they've got away from that conservative versus...
the talking head kind of split screen.
So those opportunities haven't presented themselves the same way they did in Tulsa, like when I was here in Orlando. I was telling some people this morning, before I moved to Florida, I thought all the crazies lived in California. When I moved to Florida, I realized, holy crap, this is ground central. Anything weird that's going to happen, it's happening here.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Career-wise, still on the radio. Hopefully the brand expands, and I really think podcasts are going to be the way to go. You look at people like Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's the greatest, man. He's got a listenership that would just smoke anybody.
It's amazing.
You know, in talk radio land. He sets his own hours. I'm going to do 3 shows a week, maybe 2, depends. And his shows, one of the best shows, if you've never seen it, is when he had Alex Jones on.
I saw that.
And Alex Jones, the day that was happening in real time, I tweeted, I said, the greatest radio event ever is happening right now on a podcast. And Alex Jones got liquored up, and then he had Alex Jones smoking pot, and it was just the best. It was the best
stuff.
Because when you get people drunk and intoxicated like that, you get to see the real them.
Absolutely.
And it's like, he is batshit crazy, man.
How can people find you?
Best way to do it is on Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter. Twitter.com/PC1170. You can friend me on Facebook at Facebook.com/PC1170. And you can find my podcast with Rolo. Rolo's on live every Friday, but we also podcast those, and we've got an archive. You can find those at talkradio1170.com.
You heard it here. George Bruno, 21 Report, Orlando, Florida, with Mr. Pat Campbell. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
is patriarchy. We're here to do work as men, as patriarchs. There's nothing more natural than being a father.
Welcome to the first Red Band group streaming live from the 21 Convention Patriarchs Edition 2019. For the past 3 days, myself, this panel, and all the men who attended have been talking about fatherhood, family, what it means to be a patriarch, and all that comes with it. Today I'm joined by Texas Dom, Sam Bada, Tanner Guzzi, Rollo Tomasi, Elliot Holtz, and Pat Campbell. We're going to be talking about red pill, fatherhood, and religion. Later in the episode, we're going to have a Q&A from the men in the audience, and it's live. We're doing this thing live. Listen, all these men have come together for one cause. They've come together to talk about being a patriarch and what that means. We've been having speeches, dinners, meals, drinks, forging bonds, growing that network, because in our day and age, we don't have that at home. We don't have too many motivated fathers who are getting after it, too many red pill aware men we can have these discussions with. And when we talk about discussions, I'm talking all the things that are off limits. Today we're talking about religion. There is no panel anywhere that has ever been assembled with the diversity that we have here who are willing, while dissenting opinions may be had, are to have those discussions and to say how they are doing it and how other men can take the knowledge and apply it to their lives to deal with the issues they're struggling with. But before we dive into that heavy topic, let's talk patriarchs. So Tex, how's the event been?
This has been fantastic. This was something that I needed when I was 30 and didn't have. So I think that being able to assemble this group together, be able to assemble the men in the audience, be able to ask the questions, be able to talk offline, be able to hit real life issues live, right square between the eyes is what it's all about. That's what we're doing this week.
Sam.
After spending all these years in Hollywood and understanding that little things like all the major hit songs are focused on 6-year-old girls, not the mom in the car that's 36, but the 6-year-old girl. This convention is the most important thing that could happen because men need each other and need this knowledge.
Intergenerational change is happening here. I think that's one of the most incredible aspects of the whole thing is this is going to last years. This is changing years down the road. It's just absolutely insane. Tanner, how's it been? You're definitely a patriarch.
I've absolutely loved this because as much as I've genuinely and thoroughly enjoyed attending other 21 conventions, speaking and being part of the events, there's a certain weight and gravity to the conversations that are being had, to the topics that are being discussed, and it feels like as a result of that, there's an increase in the caliber of the men. I've watched them grow. There's an increase in what we believe ourselves to be capable of as we kind of try and build up to what that weight and that gravity is. And so it's been really fun to be part of something that really is leveling us all up.
So we had a conversation, I believe it was the first day, where we said, these are our people.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, when you're online and, I'm writing the family alpha, I'm that guy, I'm talking about the fatherhood and family and something like this. I mean, to have an event, to be able to give a keynote speech to other fathers, you face different challenges than the single men. You face different challenges than, those who've not created life. So it's interesting to come into a room where everybody gets what it is I'm talking about, and I get what they're talking about. And I was like, these are my people. They understand when I'm talking about fatherhood, leading sons, daughters, they get it. It's been incredible to see each of these men grow just in the past 3 days.
Yep.
Rollo.
Me.
They're the godfather of the red pill,
Yeah.
a father, and a patriarch.
Yes.
What do you think of it?
When we started the Red Man group, I didn't really see it going much further than just a couple, few guys getting together and talking about just some red pill issues, but it's sort of snowballed into a lot of, something a lot bigger and a lot more important, I think. And now, as part of that, we decided that we wanted to expand the show to include different, I don't want to say niches, but like just different demographics and guys that are at different phases or different stages of their lives right now. feel pretty confident saying everybody that's on this panel this morning is, we're well out of our 20s, and we're not, we're not out there slaying it in the clubs or anything like that. But there is a definite need for not only just brotherhood, but and coming together and talking about our collective experiences. Well, those experiences are very diverse. So while the main event or the main convention, we have a focus that's kind of like as spread out as possible, where this one is like we're talking more about like the individual experiences of men who are in various phases of raising a family, raising kids, being married, maybe divorced, maybe not. There's just a lot of need, I think, to expand men's understanding of where it is that they are in life. Like when I wrote the second book, when I wrote Preventive Medicine, I wrote about a timeline of what men can expect from women at different phases of their maturity. And I think I probably should update that or write something else where there's sort of like seasons in men's life as well, and maybe do sort of an analogous timeline for that as well. So what this event is about is really men that are at different phases of their own maturity, where maybe they're trying to get back into the sexual marketplace, maybe they're not, maybe they're trying to work out some issues with their wives, maybe they're not, maybe they're great parents, and maybe they're having trouble, they're struggling. But the conversation needs to be had, because the way that our social order is today is it tries to isolate men, and it's becoming easier and easier to isolate men today because of the internet. We look at the internet and we think of it as this big extroversion, and it's really not. It's really an introversion. I've been watching some YouTube videos, sort of like best practices for how to run a YouTube channel, and in a few of them, the best advice I think I've gotten so far is when you're addressing the audience, you address it as you, and not as you guys or collectively, because most people, when they're online, they're watching it by themselves. They're like, they're watching a thing like that. They're just solitary. And we like to think that it's this big collective thing, but it is a way of isolating men, whereas this event is a way of bringing men together to have a group discussion, an exchange of ideas. It's a marketplace of ideas, really, is what it is. And obviously, there's nothing else like it. And seeing that and knowing that there was like that hunger for it, that's why we hit you up to do the Patriarchs edition of the Red Man Group. And that was an extension of this whole thing, and wanting to address men who are at different phases and different seasons of their lives. And I think it's been very successful.
Absolutely.
And I can see us doing other conventions that are also more focused on other aspects of men's lives as well. So, I mean, of course, the big convention in October is more generalized, but it's nice to be able to sort of draw people together, men of a certain age, together, and then share those experiences. And that's what we're doing right here, because again, there's nothing like this.
That's the note I took.
Yeah.
When you guys hit me up with the Red Man Group Patriarch, there's no channel like that that's having the discussions we're having about that aspect of fatherhood.
And they don't want you to have it.
And that's why we have to keep
They want
talking.
you to stay isolated. That's how, if anybody saw my talk, that's how how the village keeps you locked down. It's a means of control. If we're not getting together and we're not talking and we're not meeting together as men, as a council of men, that's really what I see this is. It's a council on masculinity, on, being a patriarch. A lot of people want to say that, this is all just, conservative stuff, and it's not. It's men coming together and just comparing notes is what it is. And, we don't all agree on everything, but we don't have to agree on everything. But what we do have to do is come together and start a dialogue. Because if we don't, what is it if we don't stay together, if we don't hang together, we will surely hang apart. And I think that was Benjamin Franklin that said something like that. And I've been thinking about that as we've been going through a lot of the censorship and the things that we've been dealing with right now. And that censorship is to silence you. It is to make conversations like this impossible, because they don't want men coming together, because we're stronger together than we are apart, and they know that. And that's why this is so important.
I couldn't agree more. And honestly, we're just going to continue to have these conversations. You know, the Patriarch Red Man Group was generating interest, was bringing, hey, let's get these discussions going before the convention. And then so many people tuned in, and so many people are on the chat, and so many people are just supporting the message, and it keeps on growing. So we're like, this is going to continue. And again, this is not the end. We didn't reach a finish line here. This is the starting point for all of us. So I'm looking forward to it. Elliot, you just had a Q&A with your father on this stage. It was incredible to sit there and see that, see the patriarch of the patriarch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so how has this convention been? To live up to the expectations you had coming in?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no question that we're living in a jungle, but it's a decadent jungle, a jungle of degenerates. And in the same way that we spoke about the way of the man being the way of the gang and the way of the chimp, and that we bet the chimp, our primal instinct is to band together and to go for blood. And right now, of course, we're not going for blood in terms of safety, security, and hunting, but we're going for blood in slaying the degeneracy and the decadence and building a moral landscape so that we can protect our young, so that we can lead our wives and our children, and to bring forward a new world, build a new world out of the ashes of this one that's crumbling around us. And it is 100% up to the men to do that. And I understand that they want to keep us separate so that we can't do that. But there's one thing that they can't do, is to keep us separate. And it's moments like this, and it's events like this, and it's men like the men in this room that will hold the burning ember for the new fire that's rising.
Being able to bear that burden too. When we talk about people being silenced, you know, I think of our founding fathers when they all put their name to that paper. They knew they were signing it. And this is live. All of our heads right now are just sitting out there. All of us have online sources that can just be chopped off because we spoke about fatherhood, because we broke away from the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Yet here we are, shoulders back, ready to do it.
Mm-hmm. Takes strong men.
Strong patriarchs to lead these guys. Pat, last but not least, how's it been?
Lot to say. You know, I'm looking around the room, thinking about a number of things, and the great thing about this is it's a place for us to come together where you can talk freely and share ideas without fear of repercussions or, punishment. We've seen people lose jobs because they've been involved in the red pill community, people be, deplatformed, things of that nature. But we're all pretty much like-minded in here. And my reason for coming to this particular event was to share with you any knowledge that I've gained along the way, in hopes that it will help you wherever you are in your particular journey. And the thoughts, this whole room represents one thing. It represents the natural order. The natural order. The father, the dad as head of the family, the mother, the children. Not that long ago, that wasn't a radical idea. Now, if you believe that, you're the weirdos, we're the freaks. And I'm thinking about this room, it's almost like the catacombs, because we have to meet in secret. We can't go out in public and announce what we're talking about for fear of repercussions or some sort of punishment or things of that nature. But what I hope everybody walks away with from this weekend, I'll keep it in religious terms. Think of yourself as apostles, okay? Think of this as our Pentecost Sunday here, okay? We're breathing the spirit of the patriarchy into you. Now it's up to you to go back to wherever you came from. Put it to use in your life, with your family, your friends. Call it speaking in tongues if you want to, okay? Because you're going to know how to talk to the people in your life. I don't. But hopefully we've been able to give you a lot of information today that will prevent you from having to learn the hard way. And even if because I've talked to a couple guys here who've been, totally T-boned, life's turned upside down, they thought they had the perfect family, and then the wife steps out on it. What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? Well, what you don't want to do is get zeroed out. You don't want to pull an Anthony Bourdain. All of the tools you need are in this room. All the resources you need are in this room. We've given you everything to pick up and move on and not get burnt again. And if you've got kids, they're still your children, especially your sons. And you have a duty, I'm using that word specifically, a duty, a responsibility to your children from your seed, whether it's girls or boys, but in particular boys, because that's who's going to be fighting the fight when we're gone. If we want that natural order to remain, and to be dominant again, it's on you. It's on you guys. When you go home, for the next generation and the generation after that. Talked to a guy here, a gentleman, I think he told me he was 70 years old. He's not here for himself. He's not even here for his kids. He's here for his grandkids. He wants to save his grandkids because he knows what they're up against. So we're all at different stages, but we all hopefully walk away with information that we can apply to our lives. But you're the new apostles. And this isn't a religion. It's a mindset, and it's also, when I first read The Rational Male, I remember my wife told me, she said, it was when I brought Rollo on the program, she goes, it's all the stuff you've been saying, except he wrote a book and made money on it. But it was. But I had never seen it put together so concisely, so completely. And everything all of a sudden starts to click. And once you get the red pill or become red pilled, you'll never see things the same way again. You can lie to yourself, you can go back to the old way, but you'll hate yourself. You'll hate yourself. It's a whole new way of thinking. It's finally, we have the game book, the rule book that women have had all along. We weren't privy to, imagine sending your kid out on a football field, right? He doesn't know how to play football. What's going to happen to him? He's going to get crushed, right? Well, here's the rule book on the game and how to play it. And it's up to you, men, the patriarchs here, to take that rule book home and explain the game as it applies to your sons, your family.
That segues perfectly into how I want to kick this thing off.
Right.
And before I do that, we talk about all of us going on here, duty. We talk about men having the duty. Mm-hmm. All of us are filling ours. We're coming up here, standing by our message, putting it forward, and dealing with the consequences as they come. So are companies, though. There are men who are also doing their duty. This show is sponsored by Tactical Soap. They're putting their brand, their bottom dollar, and their company's existence on the line every time we say that. Because if they're coming after us, they're coming after who supports us. But there are companies who are also doing it. There are men in the crowd who are also living it, pushing back, standing up. Just because we're on the stage, we got the mic right now. There are a lot of men out there filling that duty, and it's great to see that tide rising because all of our boats are lifting with it. And with that, Pat, not to put you in the hot spot, but you were talking about putting it to use when they go home. And to begin, these men come here. They're red pill. They become red pill aware. Right. They're awakened. They go home, and they can't help but see the strings inside their church. And all churches, it seems, are starting to push a different narrative inside that is anti-male, anti-masculine headship.
Every major Christian denomination has been infiltrated by the feminine imperative. I'm a practicing Roman Catholic. I still go to church, okay? My church, although it looks like a patriarchy from the outside because you see an all-male priesthood, I'm here to tell you, it's not the guys that are running the church. They haven't been running the church in a long time. It's the women. You go into any Catholic church, and probably about 70% of the people there are female. They're up on the altars. They're Eucharistic ministers. They're the ones that have the pastor's ear. They're the ones that are pushing all of this, this inclusiveness, this tolerance, the diversity, what I call the new Trinity, right? And there is practically not a church out there that has not been infiltrated to one degree or another.
Now, do we think the church has a chance? Are these guys, do they leave the church? I mean, you're starting to see what influence can you make? Because when you rise up, you don't have to speak in tongues, but You have to say something that relates, but people aren't going to like it, and they start pushing back.
Yeah.
But from there, it's just, what, attrition? You're all just going to run away from the church, or do you stay and try to build it up? What, I mean, I'm talking actual advice to the guys who's like, I am faithful, but the flock that I'm with, I can't run with them. They're going somewhere that I don't believe is the right way for us.
Well, with the Catholic Church, and I can speak about that firsthand, what you're going to see here probably in the next 5 to 10 years is you're going to see a massive collapse here in the United States in particular, because the people that are putting money into the collection basket are people my parents' age, and they're dropping like flies. And most of the kids, when I went to grade school, I had like 80 kids. We had two classes, 80 kids in my class. I bet out of 80, maybe 3 of us still go to church. 3. That's it. And what you're going to see is they're not going to have the money for the buildings anymore. They're going to be shutting down more and more churches. You see it all around the country. And what you're going to be left with is like just it's going to be a remnant church. A remnant. It's going to be tiny compared to what it is today. And that's where people, like the men, the patriarchs in this room, that's where you can, and again, another religious term, resurrect the church.
Yep.
But it's gonna collapse. They can't keep doing what they're doing. Even in evangelical circles, man. I've talked to pastors. They don't want to talk about homosexuality. Why? Because it might offend somebody. Probably has a son, a daughter, a family member, a friend. I don't want to talk about that. You know, I don't want to talk about divorce. Pastors can't talk about divorce because you've got pastors that have been divorced 2 times themselves. They're up there. That's sort of off the list. We can't do that, right? And all sorts of things. And what you wind up with is a very watered-down version of Christianity that doesn't mean jack squat. And now we're into entertaining people, like in the mega churches, you know. Let's get a really good band up and let's, praise and worship. And we got great programs for the kids. What the hell's that got to do with Jesus and the gospel?
It's all sizzle, no steak.
Yeah.
So to go to the other side of that, with the Latter-day Saints, you were talking in your speech about how you have this paradise and you see the walls closing in. But for right now, what do you think that your faith is doing right to where you're able to maintain that, little oasis of yours?
Well, I think one of the big distinctions is that rather than seeing the church as something, and obviously with Catholicism, there's a lot of similarities here, but then with a lot of Protestantism or anything else, there's this idea of the church is being directed by the people who choose to worship together. Whereas within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we believe in a modern living church that is being guided directly through revelation, and we're led by a prophet who is like Moses or Abraham or anybody else. And so we are, in a lot of ways, protected from a lot of this because it is not a bottom-up system within our church where people can agitate for change, where people can come in and demand that these things happen, but it's a top-down system where we're told through revelation what God wants us to do. And as in a lot of ways, we have been and still continue to be very protected by it. Now, at the same time, culturally, there's a contingent of people, and especially within the United States and amongst millennials, there's a growing contingent of people who are upset with our church and its policies when it comes to things like gay marriage or not having any women within the priesthood or any women that are clerical leaders or all of these other kind of social justice ideas or identities. But thankfully, we continue to receive messages of both love and at the same time messages of the idea that this isn't going to change. This isn't going anywhere.
Right.
Our church is not going to adopt gay marriage. You're not going to have women who become apostles. Those are core doctrines, and because that's not something that people can agitate for, we're protected against the idea that you just get enough people to vote for it, especially because we don't even have a paid clergy. Our leaders are all laymen, and so we're not even as affected by the idea that I'm going to lose my job or I'm going to lose my status within the church, because even our idea of having a particular calling or serving within a role within the church, it doesn't even grant a certain level of status. And so we're very blessed to be protected from a lot of this because of just the structure in the organization, and then even more so the source of the authority and where that comes from.
I think.
Can I jump in on that a minute? Because I had a conversation with Tanner yesterday. Recently had an opportunity to be around a rather large Mormon community. I talked about that natural order. And if I had to pick one church, not necessarily based on their belief system, but what faith, what church is best for the family, I would have to pick the Mormons. And I tell you why, and I learned a lot about this too. Like when you're married in the Catholic Church or Christian denominations, when you exchange your marriage vows, it's still death do you part. And correct me if I'm wrong with this Tanner, but when you get married when your marriage is sealed in the temple, okay, as a Mormon, it's forever, forever. Not I get out of death forever, okay, but and this is what's so cool, because they not only believe that they're going to be in the afterlife together as husband and wife, but the family's going to be with them. And that was like an epiphany for me. And then I started to understand every family that I saw, every Mormon family I saw, that natural order was there. It was beautiful. You knew who the dad was. You knew who the mom was. You knew who the kids were. Everybody was happy. But
it's almost like you see what right looks like.
Absolutely.
Hey, you're smiling genuinely. There's joy in that family.
It's like,
why are these guys so angry?
Why are you so happy? And when he talked about things not negotiable, his church is doing what a good father should do with his children: set boundaries. And you set boundaries for a reason. And I guess that's the beauty of that faith. But when you look at the families, and just the way they all work together, help each other out, it's got almost like a squeaky clean image. But there's a reason for that, because it supports the natural order.
Now, when you were talking about the top down, and that's how you can maintain, in your speech, Rollo, you were talking about how the red pill is bottom up. And I believe for any resurgence of a masculine faith that's positive masculinity, that's going to be the bottom up. And your fourth book, I mean, people don't want to talk about these things. It's a soft, and you wrote a freaking book on it. So these men, they're going to be reading book 4. They're going to be like, all right, I want to change things. And in the bottom up, how can a father filter this message from, society's blasted them with, support the Uber allies, support the sisterhood. These guys have book 4 of Rational Male. They're like, no, I don't want to support that anymore. I want to filter it and give the message I want my children to receive.
Well, the reason I started writing book 4 was because I had so many guys who would read one of my first 3 books, and they would say, I'm a Christian, how does this apply to me? Or I was running into sort of the old guard Christian male pastors who had a real problem with it. For obvious reasons in the first book, but I think that they still saw some value in it, and I think a lot of, and I don't mean to just pick on Christian men right now, because a lot of this is across religions right now, but men are leaving the church in droves at record. People are leaving the church or religion, whether that's Christianity or the Catholicism or Judaism, whatever. People are leaving religion en masse right now. But primarily, it is men who have decided, there's nothing for me in these churches anymore. There's nothing for me to, what's the reason for me to go there? Now, the more devout men will say, well, you should want to because you're religious or because you need to honor God, and so this is what you're supposed to do. Well, they can only go so far in a church that is actively hostile towards men in that church. And that's one thing that I've really discovered in my research for this book, which is quite extensive now. I've had a lot of help with it, obviously. But I think the main reason, I'm writing this book is because guys, they see the truth in the red pill. They see the objective, intersexual dynamics, and they usually have one of 2 responses. The first one is they'll say, well, I'm a Christian. How am I going to use this for my benefit in in my religion or from my particular my standpoint? Maybe they don't believe in premarital sex. Maybe they have a really tightly wound up idea of what religion should mean for them, and so, but they still can't help but see the truth. It's like when we talk about one of the reasons we call it red pill is because there's no going back once you see that. Once you see the code in the matrix. And so I'm showing these guys the code in the matrix, and they want to find some way to reconcile it with their religious beliefs. And So there's those guys who are seeking answers. They're saying, I'm in a sexless marriage, but I'm a Christian. I can't divorce my wife. I can't get out of it. Or my wife has all the authority in our marriage, but I'm a Christian and I can't leave. Right? I'm bound by my religious beliefs to live a particular life, but that life is becoming more and more untenable because of everything. And I see why it is untenable because I read The Rational Male, and so there's guys that will hit me up and say, how do I organize that? How do I come to terms with that? So that was reason number one. The other side of that coin is that I meet guys who are, and they generally are pastors or they're religious leaders, and they're younger guys. They're anywhere between their mid to late 20s into their mid 30s, somewhere around there. And they're trying to find some way to create a ministry around bringing men back into the church, and to bring men, whereas the church used to be something that was, I think the most popular idea of thinking of a church is patriarchal, right? I mean, well, it's always been by men, for men, and what are you talking about when I say, the feminine imperative has assimilated most mainstream religions right now? Women fight me on that because they say, no, religion is patriarchal. Well, that's only true insofar as who those patriarchs are trying to appease at any one time. Right now, most churches, no matter what it is, end up being businesses. What I see is interesting is the religions that try to, or the religions that have successfully managed not to be so commercialized, are usually the ones such as Mormonism or the Amish. They're not out there building mega churches, with the Mennonite beards and building a church. Hey, let's make a mega barn. Mega barn, right?
Money changers.
Yeah.
Money changers.
Well, so what happens is because we've commercialized religion, who is the primary consumer in the United States and in Western society is women. Women control something like 80% of the household wealth in the United States. I've got a lot of the stats for consumerism, but it's a well-known fact for any marketer or branding guy that women are the ones who make the purchases. They make the major purchases. If it's a house, if it's a car, if it's I was joking the other day.
Make women great again hat.
I was joking the other day that women dress their men. Right? Because men can't be bothered with style. I mean, Tanner, men can't be bothered with style, and so generally it's like I was talking on Pat's show on Friday. We were talking about how women will go and make the purchases for men and dress them up, and they're like their little dress-up dolls. They got the dress-up little Johnny, and here's my husband, and I'm going to dress him up too, and that's the consumerism side of all that. And so what do these pastors do? Well, they have to appeal to that who
it becomes a business.
Yeah, it becomes a business.
It's more than that profit has become God.
Right. Profit has become God. But and so how do they appeal to their base? Their base is the female consumer. So what happens is we go from church culture to doctrine to controlling the faith, and that's a main theme in Book 4. Is how we go from one particular faith or one particular religion or organization to a religion that is assimilated by the feminine imperative and ultimately becomes this religion of inclusivity that ignores all of the old doctrine from the religion that they're supposed to be a part of. And we'll probably get into that a little bit later here, but I wanted to say that there's men who see this and they realize that they have to appeal to women, so they have to flatter the feminine imperative to keep the lights on and the tithe checks coming in. But they also notice that there's no men in the church anymore, that it's 80% men. Or the men that are in the church are either they were children who grew up in the church, they were boys who grew up in the church, and now they're still a part of that church. Or they are the men that their wives dragged into the church to be a part of that because that was women are making the authority. They're the authority in the house right now. And so, hubby, we're going to go to church today and you're going to like it. And there's, men have a lot of responsibilities and work and everything else that they're doing as it is. They don't want to sit in and listen to a sermon about how they need to do better and need to do better and need to do better because the pastor is at the pulpit saying, men, you are bad. You aren't living up. You know, if your wife is displeased with you, it's because God is displeased with you. So we were talking about this yesterday, is we put women as an intermediary between God and man. So if your wife is not having sex with you, it means that God is displeased with you.
So
You're not doing
the church
something.
is doing opposite of what the Bible
Yeah,
says.
Elliot had that image of the order.
Yeah, that's what
that
we
was
talked
powerful.
about, and I want to talk about our workshop because our workshop was fantastic. I actually wanted to keep doing our workshop.
Well, but I think it's even more insidious than that because it's not necessarily that woman is the intermediary. Because if you think about it, the way that religion and marriage and everything are supposed to be tied together is you have man and woman, and then rather than focusing on coming together, you both come toward God, and then that brings you closer together. So it's this kind of triangle idea. And the problem is that within so many of these cultures and these religions, we've flipped the triangle. And so it's as man gets closer to God, then he's allowed to get closer to woman. And then we shape God in the image of woman as well. And so it's this idea of your wife becoming your God. And it's this whole, it just skews everything. It's so insidious that way.
And that's exactly why it has been so easy for the feminine imperative to assimilate mainstream religions right now. Because what they do is they insert themselves before God. They become the Sadducees or the Pharisees. You have to go through them to get to God. Well, now women and womankind have become the Sadducees and the Pharisees, where you have to go through them as an intermediary. Well, there are some guys in the church who are realizing this, and they're wondering, where did all the men go?
Right.
And so what they see the manosphere, and that's where the men have gone. They're all here in this room right now.
Let me jump in on that real quick because we've had this talk off air. Here's the thing: there's pastors, preachers that are reaching out to him. They want to, we're red pill. They're not really red pill. What they want to use is the red pill is bait to bring you back into the church so they can give you more of the feminine imperative.
Do not do it.
Yeah, don't do it. That's what's going on.
Well, like after we had, and Elliot joked with me afterwards, is like he said, we need to start our own religion because, or our own church, and I thought it was kind of interesting because when I'm listening to you and I'm listening to Tanner, because Tanner changed up his speech this year. It wasn't no longer about looks and
Didn't have to be the style
style.
guy. Nope.
You were talking about
There's more to you than that?
Yeah, surprise.
yeah, you're a lot deeper than that. Right? And so what I see is a lot of guys still have that thirst for religion, but they see that something's wrong in religion, and they don't want to have anything. There's nothing for men in the church anymore. If you're watching this and you're a pastor and you have a problem with me or anybody else on this panel or anything else, the reason men are not in your churches is because you're still blue pill and you're still
weak.
You're still weak, but you don't realize that you are. You don't understand the message that you are putting out there because you're still locked in the matrix. You're still caught in this idea that if I don't say the right thing, the women will leave the church. And you're right. They will leave the church because it has fundamentally changed over the course of, I would say, at least the last 30 or so years. Now, I'm talking from a perspective of Protestant evangelical churches, but this applies to a lot of other churches. And so to finish my point here is guys were, that was the other half of it. There was guys who are, pastors, or most of them are youth pastors, and they're trying to figure out how am I going to get the boys and the men back in here because we have all of these single mothers here who need, wifing up, and we got to make them feel like they got to man up. And if we don't man up, if you're not, all they're really offering is responsibility, 100% responsibility and 0% authority. So that's their failed message and all that. But they see this. They see that the manosphere is where all the men in the church have gone. They're looking for answers.
I think Tex made a great point on that when he was talking about losing faith and then going back to redemption. Going back, waking up, and I'm going back, but I'm going back on my terms.
Men are walking away from the church. They're like you're talking about. They're voting with their feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But guys like me walked away years ago because the Methodist church that I grew up in is no longer the Methodist church that I know. There's female pastors that are preaching feminism and equating husbands to being another child in the family. I got up and walked out of that church, but I still continue to try to visit now and then because there's something calling to me that I want to hear that. I grew up that. I lost that, and now I'm trying to get back to that. What I have found when I drive through my little Texas town is that I look in the parking lots when I'm driving to go check out a church. Where are all the cars, right? The LDS church has got more cars in their parking lot can hold, and they're going down the darn street, parking on the street, right? And then when I go out to some more traditional churches, they're a little bit sparse. What I'm seeing is the rise of the Bible churches with the band and all that. And if you get the right one, that we visited a couple, that there's actually good preaching word of God, trying to bring people to Christ and that kind of thing. And so far, the one that we've visited lately has not had any of that feminist crap that's come through. And I'm surprised, I'm shocked. My wife kind of likes the band thing, and I'm kind of liking the preaching. I'm like, hey, maybe we'll go back again next week. And until they start dropping that hammer with their social justice stuff, I'm going to continue to go back and drink from that fountain one more time.
What's interesting is we called, starting your own religion. When the fraternity, when we come together to do Zooms, we call it going to church. We're going to have those discussions and talk about the things they're not allowed to talk about. And Tanner brought up a great point where the church and religion is not what it isn't. That like the church is not the thing that has all these things wrong with it. There is a purpose. It serves a purpose. And Sam, you've had a wild ride. People, what is the church? These guys looking to go back to religion. There's good to be found in faith, in having faith, in being a father trying to instill religion.
First of all, Jesus said, you are the church. As a Christian, you are the church. And when you're fighting the gates of hell, all of us have fought the gates of hell in different ways, me in my career, you in your marriage. And the fact is, if you want to fight the gates of hell, you're not finding God in the church, you're finding an emotional experience made for women. So to fight the gates of hell, you are the walking church in what you do. And the first place we find Jesus in his ministry in the Bible, he's at a party with the leaders of the land and a lot of people that, a lot of the Christians that I grew up with in the Southern Baptist Church would call thugs, and the rich people. And the fact is that that's where Jesus was. And you know what the complaint about Jesus was from the head of that party? What is going on here? You brought out the top shelf wine at the end while we're already really drunk and we couldn't enjoy it? This is what Jesus did. He hung out with thugs, the worst people in the world. And my place is in the world, not of it. And it's the same thing with you and where you are in your daily life. You are the church in your workplace. God is no longer in that church. 80% of the Bible is skipped in that church. The Bible is a masculine book, and the Mormon church has got it right. It's amazing. I was taught growing up that the Mormon church is a cult. I no longer believe that, especially after being around Tanner and being in Hollywood all these years. I'm around Mormons all the time.
It just means he's good at it. I got you into this. We're all converting.
Yeah, so you leave religion because that's what it is. The church is what Jesus called the money changers. Jesus didn't get angry that much in the Bible, but he got really mad at the money changers, which is your mega church. And I know you're getting an emotional experience there, but I've died 3 times since the hit and run accident, and I know my God. I'm closer to my God than I've ever been because my pastor is the Holy Spirit. I don't need to go and listen to a man who's telling me to be a feminized male, to feminize myself, when the Bible tells me, because that's where I'm getting it from, is the Bible. The Bible tells me how to be a man. That is why all of you, the pastor, that's why all of your men have made their church the manosphere, the rational male, Rollo Tomasi, Hunter Drew, Ivan Throne, because these men know God. They know our Creator. And the reason that they write from a secular perspective and throw a few F words in there is to not isolate. Is to, I'm sorry, but you're the choir. So this is to not isolate the people who are not worshiping our Father all the time. And in my life, to keep from literally selling my soul to the devil If I had remained in the church, even though I never missed church until I was 22, if I had remained there, I would have signed one of those contracts and I would have sold my soul. But instead, I choose our Creator. I love Jesus, and the Holy Spirit is my pastor. Holy Spirit is your pastor. You don't need that church. And until it changes, which it will not, because it is addicted, it is a business. And the megachurch pastors, think about it. Your megachurch pastor makes almost 20 times what you do. And you are the church everywhere you go as you walk through life.
I've always, my faith is, the church of one. I have my personal relationship, and that's how I deal with it. But when I view men coming together, I'm working with this idea, and I'm kind of freestyling right now, is, it's like 1 + 1 = 5. What does that mean? 1 + 1 = 2. Yeah, but not all ones are equal. Sometimes you have very strong men. Sometimes you have men who have a lot of power, and that man plus one other man, that equals 5 men because of how much they're bringing to the table. It's not just 2. And that's the group aspect of all this. That's us coming together, breaking the electronic barriers. So when I look at Strength Camp, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Sorry,
had a great flow.
You take that, and then I'll push back.
Strength Camp, when I see all those men coming together and the things you're doing and allowing them to freely express themselves, I'm like, that's a strong connection. That's a strong flock. And earlier we were talking about how the flock is just as important as the faith. And you're building it. And how can men do the same? Build their flock. Find one and run with it. Find the lions and run with it instead of trying to be the king of sheep.
I think it's important for men to have an authority, no matter who we are, how top of the pile we are. Even Donald Trump looks above, looks for a father. And so, there's a sense that we could father ourselves, but I don't think it's true. I think deep within our DNA is this never-ending need and hunger for guidance. To have a good earthly father is one thing, but to know that your earthly father has a father above keeps that lineage going, keeps that authority going, keeps the divine Father's blessing coming down through the father into the family. And so I see the value in religion. I see why men created religion. And I see why there are so many people that are so hungry and so lost and so fatherless, even if the flesh father is in the home, but the flesh father has no authority because he's not drawing it down from above. And if we were to come together, we've got to come together under one father, one family, one code of ethics, one culture, one understanding, one belief, and a unity in our devotion and our direction. And so I don't know what religion, I don't know where that religion is, but I know that seed is in the heart, and it will require the soil of a good home, the water of the good nourishing from the mother, and the warmth and power from the Son, from the Father, from the above. And so those are the elements that are required, and however we decide to go about finding those, the search will be continuous until we reach that place.
We talked about that the other day, the search, right? The struggle with the faith. And we all struggle. Men of faith traditionally struggle with their faith. I think that's okay. I think people need to understand it's okay that I'm not feeling it this week. I'm still struggling. I'm still searching. I've got bloody knees. That's okay. Too many guys just completely give up. At some point in your life, you may feel a pull back. The question is, where do we go and how do we fight it? Once you're red-pilled, you can't hear one of those sermons anymore without getting up and walking out. You're literally going to get up and leave. So it's a struggle. Where do we find that? I agree. Where do you find that group of men?
Well, I love that Elliot brought up the point that there needs to be that channel of authority, because I think one of the assumptions that we're operating under is the idea that the purpose of religion is to find God and then to worship God, and it's this idea that religion is man-made or that it should be man-made, when really religion is God revealing truth to us and giving us the opportunity to know and to better understand Him. That's why, you go back 200 years and you would have all these different churches arguing that we are the one true religion, because it's not all roads lead to Rome. It's God wants us to find Him. He's telling us who He is and what He expects of us, and He's only going to do that through one channel of authority. And because we are just as, I'm not omniscient, I'm not a God, none of us are. If we just think that all we need to do is worship God in our own way, or that our interpretation of the Bible or any other book of Scripture is good enough, then we're just as guilty as these other pastors or as the women in the world of creating God in our own image. Or if we do that through a group of men that none of us have any authority, none of us receive anything directly from God, then we're collectively creating God in our own image. And as much as that can build good things, that doesn't actually get us to reach our full potential the way that finding the true religion will, and getting that direct line of authority will. So that authority thing, I agree, Elliot, that's absolutely huge that you have to have that. Because our authority, we don't have any as men. The state does, right? That's it. Rollo, you talk about this all the time. Exactly. But when you do have authority and it comes from something higher than the state, and you're part of a belief system and a culture that acknowledges that, then that's where the power that can maintain families really comes from.
Well said. So we're about to hit the 20-minute mark. So if you have questions, they're going to be lining up. Chad will have the microphone. We're going to continue on. Once I see a couple guys over there, we'll start accepting questions.
I think one more thing, if I might interrupt here. My dad would take me out on Galveston Bay fishing on Sunday mornings sometimes, and it was a treat, right, not to have to go to church. Dad and I got to go fishing. This was awesome. Dad's cracking open a beer at 6:30, that kind of thing, And I would have this discussion as I got a little older, and I'm like, Dad, Mom's in church, and my sisters are in church, and all that. We're out here, and he was like, I can get just as close to God out here on Galveston Bay fishing as I can sitting in that church. I go to that church because I want my family to go to that church, he said, but some days I feel better out here about it. And I think if I go home, and as over the years, even though maybe we fell away from going to the church, my son and I still had those moments out on Galveston Bay on Sunday mornings where we talked about life and we talked about God. And I think you can take that, you're going to be that authority figure to him, and you can take that out no matter where you are in the middle of the woods, in your living room, discussing things, and that's where the lessons are being taught. Maybe not necessarily in the church.
And in the church, where are the lessons coming from? Really, where are they coming from? I can tell you firsthand that they're templates, and those templates for your pastor's sermon, the pastor's sermons will generally be very similar across the country because they're not scripted 100%, but they are templates that they go from. And those templates, who is the best person in the world to reach women in this world? They're in Hollywood. And those templates are written by the same people that write the top shows that women watch. So that's what you're getting in your church. And if you want to know God, if you want to experience His joy and pleasure every day, you need to be in the manosphere. Read Rollo Tomasi. Get in the Fraternity of Excellence. Read Dalrock.
Yes.
Dalrock's a huge
Yes. I want to give Dalrock a big plug. If you're not familiar with Dalrock, you should be familiar. If you're watching this and this is something that's speaking to you, read Dalrock's blog. It's, WordPress or dalrock.wordpress.com. Yes. Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're just getting scripts from Hollywood. And the beautiful music, they hire the most talented people in the world to be able to make music that emotionally...
When you were talking about that, just like emotionally, thank you. Stop right there for a moment, because the reason why you see what Dalrock calls the Sunday morning nightclub is because, well, it's true, because the reason for that is you see this emotional appeal to the emotions of women, because women, when I've written several essays on this about the interpretive processes, like how we process information. There's the instinctual, there's the emotional, and then there's the rational. And for women, it is instinct, emotion, then reason, if they get to that. Then it is men, instinct, reason, and then emotion. And so the reason why you see all of this emotionalism and this appeals to emotion in modern churches right now is because that is what leaves an impact with women. When the old pickup artists were 100% right about this. It doesn't matter whether you leave that woman with a negative or a positive impact, just that you leave an emotional impact on her. They got that right, guys. And so what I'm seeing now, while you have the music and everything, and the tears streaming down, and and all this kind of stuff, and this just emotional surrender. I'm not saying that there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but that is the way that we preach, and the way that the message is couched is they're trying, and maybe a lot of pastors and a lot of religious leaders in the mainstream don't realize this because they just say, hey, this is what works. This is what I've been patted on the back for a very long time. So it must be from God because I'm getting all of this positive reinforcement from the ladies in the church, and they're saying, I love that, Pastor, thank you very much.
It's a drug hit.
Yeah, it's a dopamine hit, but they're appealing to emotionalism, and that's what, and they've just escalated it. How can we get that emotional high that much more? Because that's what's getting the women in the, asses in the seats. That's what they want.
And the only place where God lives is in the church. No. We have lives the rest of the week, and you are extremely stressed in your life and in your work, and you also need that emotional hit. And for a Christian, that is called the Bible. The Bible is filled with everything that you need. But to be able to make sense of it all, you do need Rollo's blog, you need Dalrock, because the church isn't giving you any of that. It's only demonizing you for being a man. If you want to be Gilletted, go to the Christian church.
Texas peanut butter.
Yeah.
You have a question? Yeah.
All right. Questions. You can direct it to a panel member or just throw it out there and let one of us run with it.
Hey, good morning, Patriarchs. Not sure if you all are familiar with Alice Bailey, but in the 1940s, she put together a 10-point plan of the New World Order. Just a few things out of there. People can go look it up, but it talks about taking God out of education, reducing parental authority over their children, and the one that gets me the most is destroying the Judeo-Christian family structure. I believe that this is the feminine imperative Bible, and is what has been used to insert the feminine imperative into American society and culture. My question for you, anyone on the panel, is what do you believe is the time period or event, or, Rollo, I know you talked about the sexual revolution, you talked about the past 30 years, this degradation of the church. I think it's earlier than that. So what do you all think in that regard to that question?
Do you want me to go? Okay. I have always maintained that feminism, there are no waves of feminism. I know that's going to be shocking to some of you, right? Because there's first wave feminism was good, right? It got them the vote. That was good. No. It has been the same supremacism, the female supremacism movement, the same hate movement it has always been since 1848 in Seneca Falls. If you go and you look at any of the charter from those times, and if you do any of, and it's really easy to do this, they just don't want you to do. You'd have to go and actually spend the time to do a little bit of research. But I can show you news clippings and articles from the late 1800s into the early 1900s where feminists were firebombing churches. They were plotting assassinations. There was a very, very violent movement. People want to say that, it's third wave feminism has really corrupted the good side of the equality-based side of feminism, which is just it's horseshit. I'm sorry to say it, it's just horseshit. Feminism has always been the same thing. It has always been a hate movement, and the only reason we even think of it in terms of phases or of waves is to, in some way, legitimize it in the past. It has been the same movement. It's just been interrupted by wars and cold wars and social events that have, put it on hold. And now, with the advent of hormonal birth control and giving women unilateral control of the reproductive process of all human beings right now, and the sexual revolution. Well, oddly enough, what happened right after that? The sexual revolution was started because of that. And here we are, if you figure it's right around like 1967 or so, right around there, here we are in 2019, in a very, very short time. Look at how the social upheaval that has happened in that wake. So what the sexual revolution did was it just unleashed or unfettered, hypergamy, of course, but the feminine imperative. It was held back because it didn't have free reign. It didn't have free agency. There were checks and balances prior to the sexual revolution, such as the church, such as social stigmas.
Rollo, can I jump in on something
you
said? Because Rollo used the term everybody here needs to use when it comes to feminism. Feminism is a hate movement. It's not about equality. It's never been about equality. I'm fond of saying, he who controls the language controls the debate. Doctors say 50% of the properly identifying the problem is 50% of the cure. You can't fight an enemy that you don't know who it is or what you don't see. This is a hate movement. This idea of us just being equals, it was just a great big ruse. That's all it was. But you have to use that language to confront it. And feminist has to be referred to. They tell you the KKK is a hate group. Neo-Nazis, hate groups. Totally agree. Feminism is a hate group.
Not only that, Alice Bailey was a part of the Church of Satan. Feminism is a concept that was beautifully designed by the Church of Satan. Make no mistake. And most Christian women that I talk to will tell you that they're not a feminist. But I guarantee you, you are a feminist.
So to answer that last question, I'm one of the few guys in this room that actually lived through the sexual revolution as a young kid. I was born in '61, and trust me, as a young man in the late '60s, I'm thinking I want some of that because everybody was out screwing everywhere, right? It was awesome, right? So that's to back up what Rollo was saying. I mean, with birth control hit, next thing you know, the sexual revolution in the '60s hit, and that's when I saw firsthand families getting pulled apart. I saw divorce ramp up. And there was just no fault divorce at that point. It used to be a stigma, and then it just kept going. So to answer the question, yeah, I think that was the turning point from my perspective.
Before we go to the next question, I want to just make a point that you guys need to take home. You hear Pat say hate movement. That's a heavy word. You can't bring that home. That's not PC. This has not been the most lively discussion. Men have heavy talks. Men use heavy words. We talk about heavy as the head. Are you willing to, do that? You have to have those conversations and be able to use those words. They are heavy, and they will have people looking at you. Why are you saying feminism is a hate movement? It's about equality. Don't back down. Have these conversations. This was not, again, some jovial, we're sitting, joking around, talking about PUA stuff. We're talking about religion and fatherhood. Not the most fun subject, but here we are, because that's what men do. They talk about these things because they matter. So use the right terms. Don't beat around the bush and make it softer.
And the question was about this book from the 1940s and turning points. I mean, where were the different turning points? I'll tell you the one turning point that exponentially sped this up in the last decade. One book trilogy, 50 Shades of Grey. That book is the only book, well, it's a trilogy, but the first of those books in the trilogy was the fastest book in history to reach 150 million units sold.
And the biggest group buying it, Christian women.
I was about to say that.
The demographic.
Yeah.
And that's, I am very proud of everything I've done in my career, but I did some work on that project, and that is the one regret, major regret that I have in my career. And I know that it was targeted to Christian women.
Next question. That's a whole nother rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah. Gentlemen.
Can't touch that.
I have a couple of comments before I ask, not so much a question, but a clarification, okay? First of all, Jesus said in Matthew that, Peter, you are the rock, and on this rock I will build my church, and the powers of hell will not bring it down. So even though the church experiencing right now problems like it had in the past, I don't foresee, because no power, feminism or other, is going to bring down the church, okay? That's number one. Number two, Catholic Church has actually gone up in population with the exception of Europe. Every other continent over the last year, it has gone up in population. So I say to you guys, because this has been a weekend of 100% take control of your life, take control of your family, be patriots, be tough men, go ahead and fight for what is right. So if we fight for our families, if we fight for what we love, and we love our church, then our message, which is what I need clarification here, is we should be fighting for our church, not going away from it, not attending to it, not being part of it, but being involved in it and transforming it like we're trying to transform our country as patriots. So please clarify.
Let me jump in on that since there's a Catholic angle there. He's right, we got to save the church, but here's what you're missing. Your family is the church. It's the first church. You're not going to fix any denomination, any building, until you fix your family first. Family has to be the priority. It's got to be family first. And it's got to follow the natural order, the dad, the mom, the kids.
Well, and the other clarification to add to that, and this is kind of fun because this gets down to the big dispute between the line of authority between the restored Church of Christ versus the Catholic Church is, was Christ really saying that Peter was the rock? That's one interpretation. The other interpretation is that what he was saying is that the fact that Peter knew who Christ was through revelation, that it wasn't through man, but it was not flesh and blood that have revealed it to me, but the Spirit, and that revelation is the foundation of the church, because that church won't ever fail, or that church will continue to remain. That's how God, and that comes back to this whole issue of authority. And so even then you can get down into the weeds of how it works, but just like Pat said, the family is more important than any other institution, because when all is said and done, there will not be, when Christ comes again, when whatever happens, any church will cease to exist, but family is an eternal unit that will exist forever. Right. And family is way more important than church. Church is the structure to create the ideal family situation.
And Christ established his church on earth for one purpose, the salvation of souls, okay? Not so you could get together on Wednesday night for fellowship and a good macaroni dish and maybe have a big band up on stage.
Absolutely.
We have gotten so far away
Emotional
from the original
appeal.
intent. It's not funny. It's become more of a social club. And who can entertain you better?
Nobody's saved by a social club.
Yeah.
Yeah, and families aren't saved by a social club.
What is the definition of the word church? You are the church. That's what Jesus said. You are the church, not the building, not the business. The building, the business is called money changers in the Bible. Jesus said that. Jesus got angry. You are the church.
You know, this reminds me, this question here reminds me of the discussion we had with Dr. Everett Piper on your show. We were discussing the merits or the demerits of marriage today.
And why should a guy get married in 2019?
Why should a guy get married today? And we sort of distilled it down to a covenant marriage versus a contractual marriage. And the contractual, unfortunately, the contractual side of marriage is sort of, what do we say? It's Rome, it's Caesar, right? It's render unto Caesar kind of thing. If you're going to get married, you've got to do it, because Caesar says this is the way it works. It's really more like the feminine imperative says this is how things are going to work for you, and you are going to abdicate all authority and give and accept 100% responsibility with little or no authority over your marriage. So we distilled it down to the covenant side of things, like the idea of getting married. For me is like, people think that, Rollo Tomassi, he's really down on marriage, but yet he's been married for 23 years. they think that because I don't advocate for marriage today, that I am in some way down on marriage, or there must be something wrong with it. No, I'm happy to tell you I'm happily married. Thank you very much. But I think that marriage is a great idea, and I think that it goes hand in hand with religion as well. There used to be, we didn't have a marriage contract. It was you would get in front of your family and friends and you would make a vow before God, and that was good enough. It wasn't, okay, you're going to get half of the kids and
Sign and date.
you're going to, sign and date this, please, because that's how it works. So what has happened is the world, the feminine imperative, has worked its way into marriage to make it into a contractual arrangement. My question that I put towards Dr. Piper was, wouldn't it be better to simply get back to that? What if we just, like Anthony, for example, and when Anthony was married, he just had that sort of private ceremony, no contractual thing, and of course, that worked out to his benefit when he got divorced.
Right.
But there was that side of things where it's like, I love you, you love me, I agree to be your wife, I agree to be your husband. There's that, it's the marriage that's just before you, your friends, your family, and God. And then there is, let's put the state involved in all of this. And so what's happened is the state and the contract side of the contractual marriage has become, irrevocably combined with the covenant side of things. The state doesn't care whether or not whatever your arrangement is. If you're poly or you have some, if you're okay with cheating, then that's your arrangement, right? So that's the feeling side of it. So I always want to say is like, I agree, and I think that marriage and monogamy are actually a bedrock of Western civilization. It's been something that's helped our species and us as just human beings to focus on other things, to put, to have some sort of, some tangible benefit to it. And we're seeing it being torn apart more. Mm-hmm. So there's like sort of the sentiment, the want to be married, the want to have all this, and there's the covenant side of things, and there's a contractual side of things. And so what happens is I'm trying to talk to Dr. Piper, and I'm saying, well, shouldn't we just simply get back to the real thing? Should we just not go back? And what he said is, no, we want to go and reform the contractual side so things are better for everybody in the contract. Of course, there's, he's very short on ideas when it came for that, but his first thought was to go and try to say, okay, well, I'm going to heroically stand up and be the last one on the hill to die for contractual marriage, even though we spent the last half hour or so defining the differences between covenant marriage and contractual marriage. And I see this very much in the same way as the church is right now. There is the original intent, the rules as intended, and then there's the rules as written. Right. And so the rules as written right now is Sunday morning nightclub and emotional appeals to women, and church is a business, and we have to appeal to the business. So we can go and reform that, but how do we reform that? We still have to go to the covenant side of things. We have to get back to the real as opposed to rules as intended, rules as written. And the rules as intended side of things, I'm using a gamer term here, I'm sorry, but the rules as intended was what is the feel, what is the originality, what is the original purpose of the church, and what is the financial, what is the let's make a business side of church. And you have to get back to the real before you can go in and change anything in the given structure that is becoming increasingly more and more assimilated by the feminine imperative. I would challenge you to go drive around Florida right now and drive by a strip mall, and I will guarantee you will see a church in that strip mall. Mm-hmm. Because it's a game, it's a business. It's like I don't have any other way to make money. I think I'm going to go start a church here, and consequently, you're tax free and everything else. So why wouldn't you do that? Well, it becomes a franchise. People think I'm joking when I say it's a franchise. No, it's literally a franchise
with templates scripted in Hollywood.
Right. So we need to get back to the real, and I understand what you're talking about when it comes to how can we, I don't want to give up on the church, and I don't think anybody on here wants, and whether that's Christian or Jewish or Mormon or Islam or whatever, you're going to have to fight for that church at some point, and I think that's really where we're going, but to have some sort of legitimacy, to have a real, genuine desire, you cannot negotiate genuine desire. You've got to focus on that genuine desire first before you can move yourself into changing the structure of the church or the contractual side of the church as opposed to the covenant side of the church.
Which means have Christ in you. If you're a Christian, have Christ in you. That is where the church is. You are reading Scripture. You are listening to the Holy Spirit. And you're getting stronger by listening to the Holy Spirit, communicating with God that way. And then that way, that could give you the strength to go back into the church and influence them because you are filled with the Holy Spirit.
So, and men are going to look at it and they're going to say, how do we get back to that? How do we do this? And, we're out of time now. We can talk about this all day, but that's what we're continuing to do with Red Man Group Patriarchs, the Red Man Group itself, anything else that branches off. We're continuing to find out, how do we do this? Let's get that discussion going. Let's bring in the experts and the change, the people who can actually influence change. So we're going to wrap up this episode.
At some point, you're going to have to take it back in.
I'm not going to lie.
As fathers, we have to make the decision, are my children better off in this church today with me, or do I need to go find a new church, or do I not go to church? You have to protect your kids and what message they're hearing and what they're being taught. It's on you.
Worked Up Rolo is my favorite Rolo. He's sitting here like shut the hell up, Hunter. I got to finish this. So we're wrapping this one up. Again, we're up here, Faces Online, sharing our message. We got companies supporting us, what it is we're doing. 21 Con itself has made all of this happen. Gentlemen, real quick, how can the men looking to hear more from you find you?
I've got a website, texasdom.com, working on a book right now. It's not just the whole DS stuff. There's a lot more stuff, masculinity, leadership, things like that for the family. Welcome you to come check it out.
Livefearless.com, livefearless.com, and of course at audible.com with the trilogy, the Rational Male audiobooks, and coming in a few weeks, The 9 Laws by Ivan Throne.
There we go.
So you guys can find me, especially talking about these topics. The best spot is Twitter, so it's @TannerGuzzi. And then also, if you're interested in learning more about what my particular religion is, just go to churchofjesuschrist.org or mormon.org, and you can learn more about it there.
I'm Rollo Tomasi.
Who knew that?
I'm Elliot Hulse.
I got to plug it.
Pat Campbell, a couple ways you can find me. Probably the best is on Twitter @PC1170. That's @PC1170. And do a program every Friday out of Tulsa with Rollo Tomasi. It's not only streamed live at talkradio1170.com, but we also put a podcast up. So if you go to Google and put Pat Campbell Podcast, it'll come right up. Rollo's is the first one that's going to pop up. Also, we do the Red Pill 101 every Sunday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, me and Rollo.
I'm Hunter Drew, the chief fucking patriarch. The21convention.org. If you want to attend this, we're wrapping up a 3-day week, the greatest event that's ever been put on for fathers by fathers. It didn't accidentally happen. Men came together, we did the work, we swapped the notes. If you want to support that, smash the like button. You know what to do. Share the message, reach out, get it to the fathers who need to hear this, and stay tuned because we've got a lot more episodes coming today. Take care.
Thank you, gentlemen.
What he represents is patriarchy. We're here to do work as men, as patriarchs.
There's nothing more natural than being a father.